Good evening. I call to order the Lake Havasu City Council work session on Thursday, August 27th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Public participation in this meeting is accepted, and we're excited to see people. We have a lot of members of the staff, which it's fantastic to all be in the same room again. So welcome, but we are meeting residents and staff and council members where they are at during this pandemic. So people can attend in person. We ask you to wear a face covering when you're in the area, but we have done some things at the dais with acrylic separators between council members and staff at the dais, removed the podium for call to the public so that we can be physically distanced. So we've done some things to ensure the health and safety of our citizens. Citizens can also view the meeting live on Channel 4 or view the meeting live at lhcaz.gov/TV. If you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think I forgot to describe why we put the acrylic up. It's so you can take the face covering off when we're here and you can see our mouth move. Same for anyone that comes to the podium during any discussion. If you're more comfortable, you can take the face covering off since it is physically distanced when you're speaking at call to the public or during the public hearing. The next item on the agenda is the roll call. Ms. Williams, if you could please call the roll.
Council members Jenny Koch,
Here.
Gordon Grote,
Here.
Michelle Lynn,
Here.
Donna McCoy,
Here.
Jim Dolan,
Here.
Vice Mayor David Lane,
Here.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4 is a call to the public. This is an opportunity where citizens that wish to address the city council can do so. Your comments are 3 minutes or less. There is a light indicator box next to Ms. Williams. Green means you have time, yellow means 1 minute remaining, and red means the 3 minutes is up. You can talk to the council about anything within the jurisdiction of Lake Havasu City, but we cannot have a two-way conversation. So if you do want to talk about anything that's on the public hearings, we encourage you to wait to that time so we can have a two-way discussion. Before I open up the call to the public, I do want to say when we left our meeting on Tuesday this evening, just 2 days ago, it was a really long meeting. I didn't thank the council for your engagement that evening. It was a really long agenda, and I appreciate all of your feedback and the dialogue that we had. So thank you for all your hard work. With that being said, would anyone like to speak to us at call to the public? We are also accepting feedback from citizens via email at cityclerk@lhcaz.gov, and we did not receive any for the call to the public. And it doesn't look like anyone in person would like to address during call to the public, so I'll go ahead and close the call to the public and move on to item 5, which is public hearings. 5.1 is presentation, discussion, and potential direction to staff regarding the positional analysis. Mr. Knudsen?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we have a little bit of format. We'll have some conversations and really want to encourage feedback and questions and so forth, obviously through the Mayor's direction. We'll start the staff's presentation with Sean's going to talk a little bit about the Baker-Tilly report and recommendation that came through. So we'll put some put that into context a little bit. And then if it's appropriate, I can talk about the memo that's included in the agenda packet and talk about the 4 options that staff has created for council consideration, feedback, and so forth. And then as you see, as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, we have the department heads and are here in the audience face to face. So as we'll get to it a little bit, but option 3 in that memo talks about a more of a targeted approach, department by department approach. So if there are any questions of the departments, we are here for discussion. So with that, Sean, if you would.
Oh, there it goes. It turned off. So now we're good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for an opportunity to update you on the positional analysis. As discussed at the council meeting on August 11th, Baker-Tilly provided a report which included a recommendation for a new salary structure and 3 potential implementation options for the city to consider. While staff agrees that the introduction of the new salary structure meets the city's needs to bring our positions into market, The implementation options presented consisted of a one-size-fits-all approach to bring current employees into the new salary ranges. It has become evident that this approach falls short of accomplishing the city's goals of compaction and retention. Staff believes that a more targeted method would be more appropriate, where department directors can develop an approach that would address their specific departmental circumstances, all while keeping the overall goal of the project in mind. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jess, and we'll discuss the options that are included in the memo that was in your packet.
Thank you, Ms. Arula. So as indicated, the memo addressed to City Council, in here there's some discussions in terms of the disappointment with the recommendation and report that's coming from Baker Tilly. I'll say it, I guess we were really hoping that through the consultant that we're able to dig in, look at different creative ideas, address the concerns not only across the board, but some specifics throughout the city departments and the organization. We've got a lot of years of, we keep on calling them Band-Aids that have existed. So, and it's been increasingly difficult to address all concerns. The option one in the memo does indicate the one option is to move forward with the Baker Tilly recommendation. There are two, and I'll refer to them as gut punches within that recommendation for the employees and for the organization. And again, what we're trying to do is attract and retain the best employees into the organization, but also this has a major impact on morale. So those are things that we need to consider. And obviously, all these conversations occur within the resources that are available to the city. But those two gut punches that I made mention to, one is with the recently promoted employees throughout the organizations. We have a number of different circumstances, but we have some employees that have been working here for 20 plus years, others for even just a handful of years, but they've moved from one position into a promotion, and they stretched their neck out. They did what's right. They're moving through the organization and doing good things for the city. But the Baker Tilly approach does not recognize that. So it actually would reward employees for not taking that promotion. So that's one thing that the report fell short. The other one is we've identified some really good things with the market wages and the new salary plan. The new salary ranges, which for the attraction piece, we want to attract employees. In particular, you look at, for example, in the police department for police officers, we've moved that range, minimum of the new range, up to $55,500. That's great. So we're now able to attract police officers into the organization. But what did that do for the year 2 through 6 year employees, and ripple effect up through the organizations? The police department and the police positions is just one example, and really it's most apparent where you have multiple incumbent positions within one job title. So we're seeing that here. So that's option one. We looked at trying to address some of those gut punches in option two. One of those would be, let's go back and look at years of service for the city. That'd be a direct response to try to address the recently promoted employees. And so if we did total years of service for the city rather than service by rank, which was the Baker Tilly recommendation, then we're looking at a cost of $500,000. Now I'm naming some numbers here, and I'll clarify that here at the end, and you can see there's an asterisk next to all these numbers that you see here. If you look at moving and trying to push employees or spread the employees out, those year 2 through 6 employees, and then up through the organization, but those year 2 through 6 employees in particular, we looked at again going from a 0.5 year in service to 1% per year of service within the organization. You look at that a budget amount for that additional cost is also $500,000. So if we do that, then we're adding to the $1.26 million, and now it's $2.26 million if we did that. However, that approach also still creates issues within the organization. It helps some departments, it hurts some departments, and has no impact on others. And we'll see that a little bit with some of the recommendations that come from the department heads, as you see in option 3, which is the next option. We sat as a team and asked each department to come to the table with a recommendation or a request for their specific department. A lot of the department heads and the vast majority of the department heads had already been working on several plans to address some of the holes within the Baker Tilly approach. So that's work that has been done for a couple weeks. We asked everybody to kind of put together that plan and submit that. And you'll see after the memo, you'll see a graphic that will show exactly what we're talking about in terms of the recommendations by dollar, and then some general overview of what each department is thinking. So with that, that's what option 3 looks like. Each option is probably from each department. While there's some similarities between some departments, there are offsets or between some of the departments, but for the most part, we're in pretty good shape with consistency. And with a separation that would exist between public safety, the police and fire departments, with the other departments in the organization. So you'll see that there's a little more of a dynamic for the public safety departments, for police and for fire. And but we can get into that a little bit more if you like, if that's the direction council would like to go. And then the last option here is option 4. Not my favorite option. What you're looking at here is foregoing the implementation of the positional analysis. Let's do this again and try to shoot for July 1st, 2021. And by doing that, we could reinstitute the step increases for the employees this year. With that being said, a reminder that we have 75 roughly employees in the organization that are now topped out, that would not receive a step increase, and that's one of the things that we are trying to address through this approach. Staff's recommendation, as Sean indicated, is option 3, but again, looking for direction and feedback from council. Couple things here. There is some alternatives to the existing options. We have to talk about the resources available to the city. So that's something that if the council is confident we can move forward in this manner with one of these approaches. We've talked a lot about in past conversations about the structural deficit in the budget. So we would have to take a look at exactly what that means in terms of additional revenues or cuts in other areas to accommodate these things. We've also talked about the fact that our checking account, that's the structural deficit, right? So the ongoing revenues and the ongoing expenses, we have had difficulty for many years now trying to get that to offset. We were doing really good, and then COVID hit, and so then there's some unknowns that are there. So we're going in the right direction when it comes to that ongoing, and I kind of refer to that as the city's checking account. So that's where some of the concerns are. But we do have another option there is the city's savings account. So we do have unencumbered funds within the budget that could allow us to have some conversations, but you can't do that for an extended period of time. Otherwise, the savings account goes dry and you still have the bills to pay. So I just want to put that in terms of resources. That's why you see the alternate here. If council so chooses, it's on the table. It's something that we can look to implement one of these options, or a hybrid of one of these options, or other direction coming from council. We could do it all in 1 year. We could do it and split it up into 1 or 2, or 2 or 3 years. Is also something for council to consider. Just trying to put everything on the table so that we have some good discussions. And then lastly, in the memo, it does, I mentioned the asterisks with the dollar amounts. If you're looking at public safety, so every wage you're talking about in public safety, you can add about 70 to 75%, or Jill, is that right? 70 to 75%, somewhere in that time frame? Yeah. Onto the wage for the cost of the city. So if an employee in public safety is making $10 an hour, you can tack on another $7 onto that for the actual cost of the city. That has a lot to do with workman's comp and PTO payouts and overtime, those types of things. And then in particular in public safety is the pension costs that we're spending upwards of more than $7 million a year just in pension costs, just to stay at the existing levels that we are right now, about $60 million in debt. All cities across Arizona are in a similar circumstance when it comes to that pension liability, and we are working on some different options out there to address that the best that we can. But in other departments, you're looking about a 50% increase outside of public safety. So if that same $10 wage would then be a $15 cost to the city. So just trying to put all that in perspective. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I can turn it over to you. And again, we do have the department heads here in the audience, and would really encourage some back and forth conversations.
Thank you. Yes, I'll bring it back to council for questions, and we'll get the discussion started again. As Mr. Knudsen said, department heads are here to answer specific questions. So from what I've been hearing is salary ranges, we seem to think Baker Tilly did a good job from what people say to us. Then the next part is is where people fit into the grade, which I am not an expert on at all. So maybe Sean could explain how that happened and where they are and what that looks like.
So you want me to explain how Baker Tilly put the individuals into the grade, or just in general how employees move through that grade?
Both I think would be good actually.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So when a position is assigned to a specific grade, which is the salary range for that position, typically an employee, when we hire them, or start out at the step 1 of that grade, or now what would be called the minimum of that pay band. And then employees would move throughout that range based on their tenure and on their performance throughout their employment. With the Baker Tilly approach, the employees that were below market, so that were below the ranges that were recommended by Baker Tilly, those individuals were getting moved to market, and then the implementation option from Baker Tilly was a 0.5% adjustment for every year of service for that employee in their current rank. So in the position that they currently hold. So if they have been in that same position for their entire career, then it would be that amount. If they have promoted or changed jobs at any time throughout their career with Lake Havasu City, then it would be that new higher date into the position that they currently hold. So that's where we are seeing that the Baker Tilly approach isn't necessarily the best approach for putting employees into that range, because the 0.5 doesn't add enough onto that to be able to address the compaction issues that we currently have. So that's where we've come back to the drawing board and had department directors sharpen their pencils and go through their department and address the specific needs that each and every one of them have with regards to the placement of their employees into the new ranges.
And then that's what's presented on the last page of.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's the table on the last page that was included in your packet. That includes the first column there is the proposal from Baker Tilly. So that's the 0.5. The YIR is years in rank. With a 1% minimum. And then the second column is the additional requested funds from departments in order to move their employees through the range in a manner that works for their particular department. And then obviously the total column is what at the end of the day it would cost to move all of the employees into the new ranges based on the approach from their department director.
All right, do any other members of?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
When somebody in one of these positions, pardon me? Oh, you can't hear it? Is that better? Okay. So if you have an employee that is at a certain position and promotes from that position, what is the average pay increase for promotion?
Our policy currently says that they would move into the new salary range at a minimum of a 5% increase. And then it would put them in the step that is the closest to the 5% without being less. There are some different alternatives that we're looking at moving into more of an open range concept that we can play around with that percentage based on what level of responsibility that employee is taking on to promote to the new position.
So if you had an employee that had 12 years on the job and decided to promote, it would actually be a pay cut to promote, but you would not cut their pay, but they would not get a pay raise for promoting at the 5%, the 0.5%.
It would depend on how big of a jump that promotion is on the pay scale. So if it's a couple bands of a jump, then they would see an increase because they wouldn't be at the top of their range in that new pay band. But sometimes there are occasions where we have employees that are at the top of their range, and they go into a promotional opportunity, and they get put at the top of their range again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I know this is so basic probably to a lot of you, but pay bands and ranges, what can you get to like the real basic of what that means? So when you refer to a pay band, when we're looking at this range for a position, is that the band?
Yes.
Okay, and so before on the step system, the band was different? It was like a 10-step?
We had on the program that we currently have, it's a 10-step system. So a position is assigned to the pay band, and then within that band, there's 10 steps, and that's how the employee moves through the range currently. So going into an open range concept, there are no steps associated with that, and employees would move through the range in other methodologies. That currently is still being discussed internally on how the employees will move through that range. So at this time, we don't have a definitive answer on how employees are going to move through the range, but we are talking about it.
Mr. Mayor, if I can?
Yes.
Sean, can you explain the banding and what the band, what that means in terms of up and down through the scale? Or through the listing of employee and job positions? So what is a band? What is a band? And certain employees are in different bands?
Correct. So it's basically the range, the salary range that they're placed into. Employees, the positions are grouped together in families, and those families are positions that have same like job duties or same authority throughout the organization, supervisory level, things like that, and they are grouped together in families. And then those families are assigned into those different pay grades. And then the pay grades are the salaries, the ranges that have been established.
Is there any way you can take, I know I don't want to pick out individuals, but can you take me through a person? Not a person, but like an accountant is the first on our list. Like an accountant we had that's been here for 5 years, how do they get paid, like in this new system?
So currently, an accountant is assigned to what we call a grade 917. And then there are 10 steps in that grade. So if they've been here for 5 years, they would typically be at step 5. In the new open range concept, that accountant would come in at the minimum of the new pay band, and then whatever the methodology is that we put into policy, how they move through the range, they would incrementally move through that range based on tenure and individual performance.
So as an accountant today, if I was here for 5 years, do I make less than the lowest part of this range?
The new Baker-Tilly range?
Yes.
This is not on here in alphabetical order, so I
Oh, sorry,
apologize.
yeah.
I have to look for it.
On the appendix 2 on ours, it's
Okay.
page
So-
4.
No. So a step 5 accountant in our current structure would already be within the range from the Baker-Tilly study. The minimum of the new range is 55,596. So the methodology based on the implementation from Baker-Tilly would be that individual would just keep their salary at 63,003 annually, and then they would get the 0.5 per year of service in that rank as their movement into the new salary range. Unless if that puts them at the top of the range, and then they would just get moved to the top of the range. So
Okay.
there are employees that if they've been here for 10 years, and you would say that would get a 5% under the Baker-Tilly model. But there are some employees that would put them over their range. So those employees might see a 4.2% increase instead of a full 5 because they're getting pushed up to the top end of that new range as well. And we do have that situation currently in going into the new ranges through the Baker-Tilly implementation model.
Okay. And so then from there, yes, that makes more sense. There are people that don't feel that where they were placed on the grade scale is correct.
Right. So if you look at the methodology on how they move through the range under our current step system, an employee who is at step 5 assumes in the new range that they'll be at the mid-range. But based on the implementation, if they were already within that range, they're getting the adjustment based off of their years in rank. So that might not put them at that mid-range. It might put them a little bit lower than that on the new pay scale.
Okay. And then what about on some of these positions? It says, I guess they use DNU, did not use survey information. What happens if on our comparable cities that there wasn't a comparable position or the DNUs?
Then those employees were placed into the new pay structure based on their job family. So at the very beginning of the process, all employees throughout the organization completed a positional analysis questionnaire. And based off of the responses on that questionnaire, the consultant was able to group the positions together based on their job families. And it's typical when you go out to do a positional analysis or a class and comp study that you pick benchmark positions and then you build your salary structure off of that benchmark position. It's not typical to go out and survey every single position that an organization has.
Okay. So what happens if an employee doesn't believe that wherever they were put on the grade scale is appropriate, and
There is an appeal process that employees and supervisors, managers, if they feel the same that some of their employees didn't get placed correctly on the pay scale based on their job title, there is an appeal process that can be done where they articulate what level of authority or autonomy or supervisory authority that individual has that they feel would bump them into a different pay band. And then that gets reviewed internally and by the consultant to see if the placement in the pay band is actually accurate or if it needs to be adjusted.
is that where they would move to a different family? Is that
Correct.
okay in that terms? And it's a committee that determines that, or
It goes through the Baker-Tilly process. They use a proprietary system that they will, at the end of the study, will turn it over to my office so that we can maintain the salary structure going forward. And it goes through a process by assigning a point value to all of the different criteria of a position. And based on that point value, it pops out a number, and that number is how that employee or that position gets placed on the new pay scale. So if a position was marked as having intermediate authority in the department, but it actually has complex, that would make a difference on where they were placed on the salary structure because their points would have been less under a lower level authority. So if there's a change like that, it would, in some cases, it doesn't always bump them into a new job family, but in some cases it would.
okay. That was helpful explaining how it moves through. That's an area. So then the other area of concern that I have is not knowing then how do they move from there. Like I would have thought that would have been all part of this. It's like half of the job has been done if no one knows the pathway, whether it's like how do they move through the open range system.
Policies is something that we are still working on and was included as part of the scope of work for Baker-Tilly. It has been extremely difficult to hold them accountable to complete some of those processes. So at this point, we are internally looking at our policies
And how they'll move through.
and how the employee would move through the range.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, please.
I mean, we had a scope of work with Baker-Tilly, and if they didn't do what we asked them to, have we severed ties with them? Are we looking to go after them for breach of contract? I mean, the whole reason, in my opinion, the reason we did this, of course, is to get where we are, but to not have a step program, it's like, well, how do you do that? Well, you hire a consultant, and we did that, and they didn't give it to us, so. I guess that's my frustration. I know it is everyone else, is that it's
Right.
literally lacking from did they not come up with anything for us, or was it just left out, or was it, did they not answer the question of why we don't have one?
At this point, they keep stalling and saying, we need to get this part of it finalized and finished before we move on to the next part. As far as the scope of work and a breach of contract, they have, for the most part, provided a product for all of the criteria that was in our scope of work. They have given us a new salary structure. They did provide to us implementation options. We just don't like them. So they did contractually what they were required to do. And it's very difficult from a consultant standpoint to come into an organization like ours that does have such anomalies in different departments that really need a targeted approach. It's very difficult for a consultant to come in and be able to fix all of those things, especially not being here enough to be able to see what those particular circumstances are and to be able to offer a solution to fix them. So that's where we've taken the reins back on that part of it with the implementation options and went back to the drawing board internally to try and address our particular concerns departmentally.
And in those 18 cities that we don't ask them, hey, what do you guys do, and compare, I mean, not us, but in the positional analysis, I feel kind of dumb that we signed off on this and that wasn't, that I was under the impression that that was in there. And because that's the first step is where should everybody be, and the next step is once we get everyone where they be, how do we keep up with that? And, we pay for, and like I said, I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying it's very frustrating for us to, we've been waiting for this, and then to not have that, and like I said, to have the, like I said, I'm not happy with Baker Tilly at all, and just, and when we got the information, we were told it was COVID. It wasn't COVID. We were supposed to have all this, and we got this August 11th. We were supposed to have it December of 2019. That's 4 months before COVID even started doing anything. So I'm very frustrated with Baker Tilly, as I know you are, and maybe I can express it a little bit less professionally than you can. So I just want to take that opportunity. But I think it is very frustrating that we don't have that, because we are kind of, like I said, we are not the experts sitting here. So for us to meddle into that system and come up with a solution without any professional recommendation, that's one issue. I guess I'll kind of rip off the Band-Aid a little bit here. It sounds like the whole point of this is for us to have discussion and then make a recommendation. So I'll hit some discussion items. And then recommendation, I feel that option 3 is the best. It gives us the best ability to let the department heads do what they need to do. Unfortunately, we can't give them a blank check with that. I've told some of the department heads that I met with, I'd much rather see you shore up your personnel area, because there's some people that will leave, there's some people that won't, and you don't want me getting in there deciding who gets what. I mean, that's why you're the chief, that's why you're the department head, you guys know your departments. But like I said, we only have so much money, but then again, I'd much rather you fix a problem now in that area and come back to us with an emergency 2 years from now because we need new police cars or we need new fire trucks, and because those you can order. And those, the lead time on those is, there's lead time. You can do that. You can loan. You can do stuff. But with people, you can't. And we invest so much time in people. So I guess that's I'm mainly talking to everybody in the audience and everybody at home. I know everyone's been waiting, and I'm going to ask everyone to wait some more. We're going to do this. I know it's very frustrating. I'm very frustrated. That's why I don't like option 4. I like the idea of going with option 3. I think we're super close. I've seen some of those recommendations. I think there are some great recommendations, and I think there's some scary recommendations that there's I just used the police department. Well, if we're going to use money, where are the cuts going to come from? So it brings us back to our revenue issue that it is for another meeting that we're going to have to solve. But like I said, I understand and people are going to come up and give your opinion and everything, and I appreciate that, but let me grandstand for you guys right now. Don't worry that you have to. This is very #1 priority for all of us. Like I said, I'm not running for anything else. I got 2 more years in this position. I'm going to make sure this is the best it can be, but this is not a one-size-fits-all. Even with Baker Tilly, I'm glad we got the ranges. It sounds like that's good, but I've told some of the department heads and even some of the associations I've met with, you don't want the Baker Tilly recommendation of pushing 0.5, an extra 0.5 for years of service, because if that goes all the way across the board, that's a number that council is going to be like, how do we do? So we're close. I like the idea of working with the department heads. The stuff I've seen is good. It's definitely a work in progress, and there's some things we need to say too. I mean, each department is different. Police and fire is different than other departments. Public works is different. I mean, they're very different and have their unique problems. Police and public works do have some issues where they have positions there. We train them to a point and then they leave. And you can see that in the numbers of how many positions are empty and how many positions we keep leaving in the middle. Now, in any business, it's not bad for people to change careers or move on. Someone moves from, I use the fire department, a captain goes somewhere else. Well, great, an engineer can move up to captain, a firefighter can move up to engineer, and then we get there's a certain healthiness to that. And for us, I think for some of us, I haven't been around government, so some of this stuff is new to me that, a level 5 or 5-year person needs to sit here and level 6 and level 4, and we need to fit right in there. And like I said, it's new to me, but it's also more intense, I think, in public safety because it's a it's a standard in a lot of these areas, where in other departments, it's not so much a standard. It doesn't determine your retirement and your pension. And some city departments, you know, the pension is a different level playing field, but every job is different. So like I said, it's very hard for a one-size-fits-all approach to this. And I guess that's my concern with us saying we should do Baker Tilly this, and that. I think we have the range. I think we need to let the departments do what they do. The fire chief knows, you know, who's coming in, how many people we have coming in, who's might be on the fence of leaving if they don't get what they need, and same thing with the police chief, same thing with the public works department. You don't want me with my fingers in there trying to be like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? You know, we also can't come back with a number that's unrealistic. So, like I said, I just want to clear the air a little bit. I thank everybody. Like I said, this is my #1 priority, and I think I can speak for everybody here too. We're going to keep it going. We're also aiming for that August 1st, September 1st, and we're trying to get these numbers dialed in. And once we know these numbers, then we get to jump into the world of Oracle and the situation with that to try to get them into the system so we can do this. So we also don't want to lose the speed. I'd much rather not lose what we have, and if we can get some numbers and get them in there, and then we can fix them, or if at least we can have a win that, okay, we got everybody at this level, now let's conquer the next thing. And it sounds like us, you know, talking about, you know, the levels is, like I said, we're not experts. We need an expert. We were supposed to have an expert, and we didn't have an expert. Well, maybe we do what government does, and we go out and look what other cities do and start there. But like I said, that's just my opinion. So I like the idea of option 3, and that we can finesse it and work it and, you know, go from there. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments and questions before we open the public hearing and bring it back to council?
Well, if we're going to start giving opinions now, thank you, Mr. Dolan, and I agree with you. And I think all of us, I was looking at this Baker Tilly report, one of their favorite things to do on here is put DNU. And I think we need to DNU them. Do not use ever again. I don't think anybody in this room sitting here is happy with this report. We can all pick out bits and pieces of it and say, yeah, that part's good, but that part is not. And so let's not use this whole report. Let's take the parts out of it that are the best and use that. I had a talk with one of the employee associations this last week, and I said, what's the solution? And he told me, I don't know. I said, well, let's go talk to your department head and figure out a solution. And the very next day, he called me back and said, we have a solution. I said, perfect. That's exactly what we want. So going forward, and obviously, you know, there's been a lot of past issues over the years. This has been ongoing for years and years and years. Everybody in this room inherited the problem. They didn't create the problem. But we are all committed to solving the problem, and we'll do that. So going forward, my personal opinion, what I would like to see happen is option number 3. And thank you, Sean, Jill, Jess, everybody that's been working on this. This has been consuming everybody's life. Going forward from here, what I would like to see happen is everyone who is a department head, as they're doing their budget, they work with their employees. Okay, what is it going to cost us to implement the proper payroll for our department as part of our budget? So the employee organizations work with their department heads and say, okay, this is what it's going to cost. And then when the budget goes forward to the city manager, they have a number of what it's going to cost. Mr. Knudsen brought up the fact that for public safety, there's 70% additional. For other people, there's 50% additional because of ancillary costs such as retirement. That's the cost of doing business. We're going to pay those costs. That's what we do. Then after the department heads have talked to the city manager and they know how many dollars they're going to need, that's when the budget comes to us and we make the big picture issues and recommendations and approve budgets. And if there's not enough money in the budget, it's our responsibility to then go to the taxpayers and say, hey, do you guys want good employees or do you want bottom of the list employees? We don't have enough dollars to make this happen. We need additional revenue sources. And that's the conversations we're going to have over the next couple of years. How are we going to pay for all of this? We're committed to figuring it out. That's what we're supposed to do. Figure out how to give the funding to the city manager to make sure that you guys all have the dollars that you need to run your departments. A lot of this where we're getting emails saying, well, I'm in this position and I think I should make this much money. That's not our job. That's your guys' job as department heads to figure out how much each of your employees should have. And I think we're getting kind of lost in the weeds on whose job is what, who should be figuring this out and who shouldn't be. We should be figuring out how to pay for it. You should be figuring out what it is that it's going to cost to keep the top employees here in the city. So I think option 3 gives us that option. And I want to thank you all for your patience. We all said that, hey, we're going to do this positional analysis. It's going to be the greatest thing that you ever saw. And we're going to fix these problems. And this was handed to us, and I thought, wow, that's a pretty good sized summary. And then I started reading through it and realized that this was the entire report. I was astonished. I don't know if any of you were here for the meeting, but I was thoroughly disgusted. It took me 5 or 10 minutes just to regain my composure because I was not happy, and this is not what we paid for. And it's not that difficult. We're a municipality. There's thousands of municipalities across the United States of America. We have a whole bunch of them here in this state. We're trying to reinvent the wheel. Everybody's doing this. Well, let's figure out the right way to do it, and let's all work on this together. It's not one group versus another group. It's not us versus you. We're all part of the same team, so let's all work together. Let's come to a consensus. I agree with Mr. Dolan that item number 3 is obviously the best way to go because it has the most amount of input. So with that, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions before we open the public hearing?
I was wondering, maybe Oracle would have a solution for us.
You didn't go there.
Yeah.
Too soon?
Yeah, Councilmember McCoy, did you have any comments before we open the public hearing?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I just concur completely with what Councilmember Lane and Dolan have just said, and I'm sure the rest very much agree. This has been something that we've been trying to get together for our employees for a long time. And each time we have to come and say, please be patient, it won't be long, it won't be long. It's as frustrating for us as it is for you. I want to personally apologize that I have not been able to be there in person for this week for these extremely important issues. And it in no way reflects that I take this lightly. This is very, very important. And, I know we were all here late Tuesday, and where I was, it was 1:30 in the morning when we were done. So I really am dedicated to doing this, and I appreciate everything that the employees have done, everything that everybody that's been working on this. I think the solution that they have said, the number 3 currently, and then working with the department heads, we're a group. We've got to come together and work together and not be divided. And that's what I think that they're saying, and how I feel about this too. Our safety and welfare for our citizens, for ourselves, we want to make sure that our employees are taken care of. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing if there's anything else that you think or need to say to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question for the city manager or for Sean. How close are we? I know September 1st is right around the corner, but I mean, in reality, now that it sounds like we're pretty much have direction with option 3, and that we're also going to continue to look on. But I mean, with option 3, how close are we with what the departments have? Like, how much more finessing? I mean, can we get a ballpark? I mean, do we have an idea of now that we've kind of agreed we're going that direction? We've seen some reports. Each department has kind of submitted things. I mean, how much more time do we need until we can, and like I said, it doesn't even have to be approved by us because we've already given direction. This is a staffing issue, so we don't have to come back to meet if that's my understanding to vote. It's a staffing issue. So, like I said, I guess how much more time, so, before everyone comes up and gets public comments, maybe we can kind of give them a time frame now that we seem to be narrowed in with option 3.
I'll let Sean chime in here as well too, but I think that it was important to have, we're getting some feedback and consensus coming back from council. So if we can decide in terms of what the next steps are, that's the biggest step, and as far as that direction. So once we have identified a plan to put into place, we won't be able to, the initial target date was supposed to be September 5th, and we identified those dates because that's the new pay period. So I think that, Sean, I can turn it over to you, but we talked about like maybe a 2 to 3 week. So, and maybe, I think more importantly, Sean, can you talk about what we need to do as city staff to, as far as inputs, and Jill can assist if need be, but what do we need to do as city staff once we have the plan and the numbers? What do we do with those numbers, and what's the next step? And that'll explain kind of the time frame, Councilmember Dolan.
Sure. So because we knew already that the salary structure that was produced out of the Baker Tilly report was a good salary structure, we have already started working on that in Oracle. The next step in the process after all of that is completed and input into the system is we need to assign all of the positions into the new structure, into their new job families. And then after that occurs, then we have to assign the individuals into those new structures and into their new pay band. The department directors have been ready and willing and are ready to set aside some time to be able to get this right. 2 to 3 weeks is probably sufficient for us to be able to get everything into the system, make sure employees their paychecks will be right based in the new system, and gives a little bit of time for the department directors to fine tune their recommendations or their proposals that they provided to the city manager.
Okay, so one more question. And just to clarify, just to make sure, because we mentioned option 3 with our memorandum that we have, and our option 3 is different than what the Baker Tilly option 3 is, so I just want to put that out there. So they're worded the same, but totally different. The other thing I just wanted to say is that I forgot what I was going to say. Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Lane.
Sean, you'll be able to implement all this, you said it in a couple weeks, and there may be some, as you said, somebody may not feel that they're actually in there correct, and there's an appeal process. So even after everything gets put in there, there is a way to tweak it, so you can change people's numbers if it turns out, oh, that's not quite exactly where they should be. We'll be able to fix that as we move forward. It's not a one and done type of an issue.
Yes, absolutely. And with class and comp, it is an ongoing revolving process. There's never a time that we're not looking at positions and making sure they're in the correct pay bands and things like that. When you implement a big study like this, you bring in the employees for their input on that, or the supervisors, so that there's another set of eyes on everything. So it is not an end-all once this is established. It is something that will be maintained, and we will be continuously going out and checking the market to ensure that our ranges are competitive. It is typical to go out and do this type of a study from a third party to come in and do this, typically every 5 to 7 years, and Lake Havasu City is currently on year 13 of doing that. So it was long overdue to have a consultant come in. It's just unfortunate that it's the consultant that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Knudsen, based on option 3, the way it's worded here, it would appear that the department directors have not been involved in this process, just with work with department directors to address the market wages through their own department. Can you talk about the process and the involvement, who's been involved to get us to where we're at now?
Certainly, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for pointing that out and with clarification. No, that is. We've spent many Thursday mornings with city staff trying to figure out in terms of what the best approach is. Some of those initial conversations are about trying to find that one size fits all approach. What can we do across the board? And the reason for some of those conversations was trying to explain to the employees where they're at. And some of the conversations we had is how do you talk to the next employee that walks through the door, whether they work for IT or parks or police or whatever else? How do you explain when they ask the question, why am I getting paid this and why is that person getting paid that? And I think that was what we're trying to accomplish. Didn't work out very well. We've had a lot of conversations on Thursday mornings. That's our weekly staff meeting with the executive team and the leadership within the organization on what are we trying to solve? What are the problems? What are the ideas? And we throw all these things on the table and we try to figure out the best we can. In addition to that, they go back and work with their respective teams and come up with different ideas. And we've seen many spreadsheets and many very detailed spreadsheets are coming back from the department heads over the last several weeks. So those are part of those conversations, and then we wait for the Baker Tilly recommendation. We bring that recommendation to the council. We air it in front of the community, the council, the employees, and then that's kind of the formula. What we try to do with a lot of these issues with regards to the city. Let's put it out in the open and see if it sinks or swims. And based on all the conversations we've had with the department heads, with the community, with the council, the employees up and down the organization, then we're able to try to do refine it and make that the best approach. But yeah, certainly those are. We've had a couple hour conversations, that alone, on Thursday morning meetings for several months, and so that's been ongoing. Yeah, is that helpful?
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. All right, we'll go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I can make
Yes.
kind of 2 points here. One, when you look at the department heads, when their recommendations, and that's that final sheet that's in that agenda packet, you see the different costs that are associated to the city. These are just based on wages, remember, again, too, plus the additional costs tied to it. Not all of these costs are directly tied to increases in wage or pay. So it'll vary a little bit by department. Some departments are asking for additional dollars beyond the Baker Tilly recommendation or the initial proposed cost, and some are tying it into their existing proposal. But you're seeing, in addition to wage adjustments, you're seeing requests for reclassifications. So, Mr. Mayor, you talked about what is a grade and what does that mean. Ms. Arulas has talked about the fact of different appeal processes for your job titles and so forth. So reclassifications mean let's look at the existing responsibilities, role and responsibility that the employee has, and let's look at the job titles. And also, through a reclassification process, department heads are able to look at their department, how it functions, how to streamline it and provide efficiencies, and maybe we increase roles and responsibilities for these employees, and then that would then result in a reclassification. So if we're going to give more roles, more responsibilities, more job duties, then that job title would then change, and that's the process that Sean talked a little about, and that would impact how that title, or in this case, how that employee would work through the grades. So reclassification would then be a higher grade as well too. And if I can, the last thing here, we talked about the Baker Tilly contract. I want to point it out because we talk about spending taxpayer dollars on a contract and getting a result that we're not happy with. But one of the things that is part of this process, and Sean can correct me on some of the numbers, but I think the Baker Tilly contract as a whole was right around $91,000. But that included some things at the tail end of this process that they were going to assist with. $17,000 to help us with evaluations, another X amount of dollars, less than $10,000 for policy, looking at policies, those types of things too. We don't need them. We'll figure that out, and that'll result in a cost savings and drive that initial cost of $91,000 down, and that's what we're trying to do to save those dollars.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Vice Mayor Lane?
Thank you. Mr. Knudsen, you brought up classification and reclassification of employees. Do the department heads have the autonomy to classify and reclassify employees within their own organizations?
Certainly, within reason, right? So each department's going to look at their operations, what they need to do. There's a process that's existed in the city for many, many years, and all cities across Arizona and the country for the most part. They're going to recognize a need. They're going to send that reclassification request through HR, and then at that point we take a look at it to make sure that it's still aligned where it needs to be within the particular grades and so forth. So yes, all those requests are the origin is coming from the departments. And if you want to get into the weeds, Sean, Ms. Arula can go through that process with you as well too. But yes, the short answer is yes.
Well, we don't need to get into the weeds. I was just curious. We did receive some letters from people that felt that they should be reclassified, and quite honestly, that's not our job. I would think that would be the department head's job.
Yeah, and just to follow up, what I heard earlier was not exactly as that was just described. I had heard that they can apply for it, and it might be denied. So I don't think the department head can say this is somebody and I can do that.
Typically for a reclassification, that is for an individual who is working out of class. So it would be like an administrative position who has taken over supervising employees and they're still getting paid as an administrative position. So then a department can go through a process that says, X employee has been performing these particular job duties, which actually fall into this higher classification, so that employee would need to be reclassified to get into that new classification. If it's the development of a brand new position, we typically go through a recruitment process and employees would apply at that time. And then we would go through a competitive recruitment process to fill that new classification. So there is a little bit of a difference there when if it's the employee is currently performing those job duties, that would be a reclassification. If it's a brand new assignment that a department would want in their division, we would typically require them to go through a recruitment process because there may be other individuals within the city that possess the knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform that job. And we like to afford that opportunity to our employees to apply for that.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, and then you talked about that appeal process. That's a little bit separate what we're talking about. That's in particular for what we're talking about with the positional analysis. So we went through and identified job titles, job descriptions, and then put them into a grade. And then there's the appeal process that was identified is directly for this effort. So if the employee, the supervisor, the department head looks at that and goes, I don't agree with that as far as this implementation, then there's the appeal process.
But not guaranteed. So
No,
the department head, if I'm the department head and I say, I believe my employee belongs here, I go through this appeal process, you all might not agree and I don't get my employee in that grade.
Well, and sometimes the appeal is, we've seen it, and Sean can highlight it, or speak to it, as we've seen those appeals coming directly from the employee itself. Yeah.
And that through policy, that's allowed? You don't have to work through your department head?
Well,
No, through the policy, it should go through the department, and the department director is really the one that makes the recommendation to my office and to the city manager's office for reclassification, for when it falls outside of this implementation process. And then if an employee wanted to appeal their placement on the new salary structure, that too would go through their department, and their department would do their due diligence in looking at the position as it relates to other positions within their area, and make a recommendation to, again, myself and to Jess, if they feel like that position was misplaced. A lot of times we get requests from employees based off of their individual knowledge, skills, and abilities, and it doesn't quite fit with the departmental needs. So we don't reclassify employees based off of what they currently possess. If the position, and a good example of that is if somebody has a master's degree, and they feel like because they have a master's degree, they should be reclassified to a higher level, but the department indicates that that position really only needs an associate's degree, then we wouldn't reclassify that person just based on the fact that they have a master's degree. So there are some differences and criteria that has to be met in order to have a reclassification be approved.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember McCoy?
if I could ask, I'm just wondering if there are any department heads that are there in person that might want to speak to this.
It
I
looks
think
like
that
they're all
would be
here.
interesting to hear from.
Yeah. Do any department heads want to talk about the process? Do you have anything specific, Councilmember McCoy, that, because I think Sean
No,
answered my question, so I don't know if you
no.
have something specific that puts him kind of on the hot seat.
No, it's just that, we're saying, okay, it's there, usually they would come forward and say this person should be. So I'm just wondering if that's how their understanding is.
Greg? Yeah. That's pretty, I thought you indicated you might want to speak, so you don't have to if I called out a turn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually scratching my nose. Yeah, I think we can all agree that this process was very clunky throughout the entire 2 years. And maybe something that you guys aren't aware of, but this option number 3 that we're all excited about didn't exist 6 days ago. So it was put together quite hastily, right? And I personally think option 3 is the best. However, my proposal that's going to cost $50,000 extra was really a high level guess. I didn't have time. I was asked last Thursday to put together a plan. And I panicked a little bit because they still haven't had any information. I mean, this entire process didn't involve me or some of the other department directors. We had a meeting 2 years ago with a consultant, and I think we had a follow-up meeting maybe 18 months ago, and that was it. They disappeared for the longest time until they were ready to push out the new job descriptions that they were supposed to write. Well, those were going to be delivered directly to the staff without our involvement once again. And it was me who requested, let's put the new job descriptions to the department directors, and we'll administer that process within our own departments, correct? So I got that to happen. And what I found out, I sent it out to my supervisors, but what happened was every single job description was incorrect. I mean, really incorrect, badly. Didn't even pertain to the job listed at the top. So we had to rewrite everything, me and the other department directors. And one of the things that I noticed to demonstrate that a one-size-fits-all isn't going to work is fire, police, and public works are all relatively the same size regarding people, right? Fire and police, I think, had 18 to 20 job descriptions to redo. I had 52, and I was given 2 weeks. So myself and the leadership down in public works spent a lot of late nights to meet this deadline because we had a short window so it could be incorporated into the final report. So I can't remember exactly the day the deadline was. I didn't meet the 5 o'clock deadline. I think I sent it in about 8 o'clock that evening. Excuse me. And we got everything in, which included all the new job descriptions, new titles. It was all the things that we had already paid the consultant to do that they didn't do, right? So we took that opportunity to try to restructure. And as I sat and watched the presentation to you folks, none of that hard work that me and the other directors did was included in the report, none of it. And the next Thursday, I was told that we just didn't have enough time. And I said, that's fine, as long as we're afforded the opportunity to do those reclassifications after, right? And they said, yes, that would happen. So for Public Works, another thing I wanted to point out is, Jess showed great wisdom a year ago last July when he placed me down in Public Works, right? And he gave me a directive to initiate change and restructure and get, improve efficiencies and whatnot. So that effort, he even got me a consultant for $100,000 with EUSI and Paul Hendricks. And that effort was going on at the same time as this positional analysis was. So this is great. We can get those two together to help with the restructuring of Public Works. I don't know how a firm who I've only had one or two conversations with can help me restructure my department. But Paul in EUSI was also denied access. And there was a component in his contract specifically to review the positional analysis to help Public Works get what they need out of it. And we just eliminated that from his contract because I don't know if the information didn't exist. I think he and Sean met a couple of times. I don't know if he ever got to the consultant, but again, nothing. We didn't actually pay Paul for that work like we paid the positional analysis consultant. So it's been very, very frustrating not being involved. And then last Thursday, I was very alarmed when the conversation turned to just throwing the study away because we're losing people like crazy. We're down, I think, 8 people right now. We've lost 8 people to higher paying jobs just in the utilities. I know for a fact we've got 3 right now applying for different jobs, higher paying jobs. And I know that because they're here wondering, they're confiding in me as to what's going to happen with the positional analysis. And I don't know. these options, I read them the same time as you. These staff meetings are, are, are not collaborative necessarily. Like I said, out of frustration, we were given direction to put proposals together that would make our departments whole. And that was just last Thursday. That's moving kind of quick. If we go with option 3, we're gonna need to refine those recommendations a little bit. But I'm confident I can do it within that $35,000 that I said I would.
So with option 3, would you be able to do what you said, reclassify people that you believe need to be reclassified within your
Yes,
department?
I guess my point is, in my proposal, I said $50,000. Public Works has 35 employees that are going to get less than $1,000 for their annual pay increase with the Baker Tilly proposal. And that's, 35 is a high number. I thought maybe if we could move those folks up to $1,000 minimum with the Baker Tilly proposal, that would cost just over $12,000 for Public Works. And I think that would be worth it just to show the value we see in our staff. And the other things, the other 35,000 that I was proposing is to create the different tiers. I've got roughly 10 people that operate 4 treatment plants in water and wastewater. And they rotate schedules, right? But they all have a different title. So what I was hoping to get out of this study was some kind of a promotional ladder created. Plant operator 1, plant operator 2, plant operator 3, something to allow an employee to advance instead of just sit there. So I was with 35,000, I think I can get that situation corrected, but I would have to be afforded the ability to create new job titles, which I think we paid the consultant to do and did not receive.
But with your office, Sean, and Jess, your office, and what you're doing, you can make that happen within the number you've requested?
Yes,
In option 3?
if I had the dollar amount that the Baker Tilly proposed, which is 286,000 something for Public Works, 12,000 to bring minimum raises up to at least $1,000 annually, and then move my plant operators and utility workers around based on experience and what they're actually doing. I think I can get all of that done for less than $50,000.
Yeah, good. All right, yeah, that's where the number's at. Would you save the 3 people?
Pardon me?
Would you save the 3 people that are interviewing right now?
Well, it depends on what happens at the end of this meeting, I think.
Yeah.
We're losing people to the Metropolitan Water Authority and the CAP and the Central Arizona project, and they pay astronomically more than we do, or the comparable cities. So, yes, I think if we can get the market study implemented, that's very important to Public Works because we're really below in a lot of utility positions, and we're up against the CAP and the MET.
Yeah, which are unique to our area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't. We're just going to have to accept we will lose some folks, but if we can show that we're at least paying market, I think that'll get them to stay here in Lake Havasu City.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I have a question for you. I know in the past, I'd heard we have like level 1, level 2, and then we get them to certification levels, and we're basically the great city that trains people for other departments and other organizations. Do you feel that now you have the funds to be able to keep those people at that level? I mean, like I said, how much more competitive is some of these other markets? Are we able to keep up? I mean, or is it?
If we implement the market study, most of my department was pretty happy with the actual market study because it's a significant increase. We don't know how we're going to advance through the range yet or what next year's raises are going to be, but we're going to be taking care of this year and get us to a good starting point, which is what the staff is looking for, right? And those different positions require grade 1 certifications up to grade 4 certifications from Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. So you can't be a plant operator unless you have grade 4, but you can be like a utility mechanic with a grade 2. But right now, all the job titles are archaic. It really took me a long time. I'm not sure I still understand the hierarchy. Field supervisor and utility supervisor almost have identical job descriptions, but one's a little bit higher. And so I'm trying to get appropriate job descriptions that are typical of a public works department. We've really got off the rails here over the last 10 years. And yes, I think if we get to market, then we're competitive. Then we're paying the folks what they're worth.
Okay.
And then we're going to have to be very careful how we move forward from there.
Okay, so if I heard correctly, didn't Baker Tilly did that part, the job description stuff? So that just
Listen,
needs
yeah,
to be provided to you?
when we got that market study and then got a pile of incorrect job descriptions, I said to the group, all of us, I said, fire them. They're not doing us any service. We already have the market analysis, and I think we're good with that. So let's implement that immediately, and we can spend the rest of the year figuring out how we're going to do the evaluations and those kind of things.
And just to touch on that point, the job descriptions were less than what we would have desired out of the consultant. Again, going along with their model that they have there, they just basically did the minimum. So we are spending a lot of time going back and relooking at the job descriptions and comparing them to the actual functions of the positions in the organization. And we are having to do a lot of work on the job descriptions as well. So to Greg's point, they did not come from the consultant ready to publish. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on
No,
them.
and incidentally, the date on the job descriptions were October 2019, and we got them in July or June, right
Up
around
to
that.
2020.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, in my opinion, the consultant, the steps in which the consultant took, they did them in out of order, and it caused some panic and some frustration at the end of the process here with the departments and my office and everybody else that's involved in this, that could have been avoided if the steps were done in a different order.
Well, to that point, I've got a whole division full of project managers, and the goal with those, I manage all kinds of consulting contracts, and a project manager is supposed to manage the consultant to a desired outcome, and we didn't get that, and I don't know why, because I wasn't part of the process, but it sounds like we're paying them.
Yeah, very disappointing.
Question, Sean, when you say that you're reevaluating all of these job titles and descriptions that they had, are you working with the department heads when you're doing that?
As Greg had indicated, the job descriptions did go to the department directors, and they worked extensively on the job descriptions and getting them right. And in doing that process, some new job descriptions are going to have to be created based on new titles that departments have requested, and that kind of stuff. At the time that we were trying to finalize the report and get stuff over to council, there just simply wasn't enough time to create all of those new positions that were being requested at that time. Like I've said throughout the entire process, it is an ongoing thing. So once we get once we get this implemented, it doesn't mean that we wrap it up and put it on a shelf and don't ever look at it again. It is going to be an ongoing effort, and we will be continuing to look at the job descriptions and job titles and things like that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could say something, just a perspective, and a question I had is, well, if really all we like in this whole report that was anything that was good, we think it's all bad except for the ranges. And the ranges were basically just pulling data together from other cities. I mean, my question was, well, why didn't we do that? And the city, when I asked the city manager, it was, well, it's because it's third party, and it was also part of the consultant. They're consulting us. Well, I'd like to take the credit away from them on that, so we don't say that's the one good thing they did, because basically that's not consulting, that's data gathering and data reporting. We're making the best of that, but I mean, pretty much we could have done that. And so, like I said, if people are asking, well, if you don't trust the whole report, why are you even, because I've wondered that, if we don't trust the report, why do we trust their ranges? Well, because they basically got on the phone and asked 18 other cities, hey, what do you pay? And those cities shared just as much as I think we do with other consultants as well. So I just thought that was a very interesting point, is like, why do we give so much credit to this ranges? Well, it's just basically the numbers that we gathered, and it's some of the same numbers that the Fire Association and Police Association have gathered. So they're numbers, they put them in a spreadsheet for us. So just to clarify.
And I think Mr. Dolan is, it was 10 comparable cities, 8 provided data, just for the record, that it was 10 total cities, 8 provided the data throughout, but it was still the comparable cities that were determined, so. All right, any other questions for Mr. Frosley?
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank
might
you.
have a question or two, Mr. Mayor. If I
Yeah,
might.
please.
Can, Mr. Frosley, how many times did a Baker Tilly representative come to you as the head of your department and ask you about the jobs in that department and so forth? How many times do you remember?
We had one kickoff meeting at one of Jess's city manager staff meetings where she came and introduced herself, and we all introduced ourselves and described our departments and that kind of thing. And then before she left town, she did come down to my office at Public Works, and we sat for several hours and talked about what I wanted to get out of it, what the process might be. So twice.
Those were the entirety of the two? The
Yeah, and it
kickoff
was
meeting,
over a year ago.
and then a couple hours asking for high-level objectives, but never actually talked to you about any of the positions. I thought that's what I understood, and I just want to make sure it's clear on that. Then, so when you were asked to create the positions that you need in the department and write the descriptions and everything, you and your staff were able to pull that all together between the time you were asked and whenever the deadline was to get this done. Mr. Dolan mentioned that there's different levels of certification. You spoke to it briefly with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, the ADEX certifications, and this is just an example, but I think it's important for people to know that sometimes these people, and you mentioned that we compete with CAP and Metropolitan Water, which is mammoth. They have all the priority 1 water rights, by the way. So no matter what we do, they'll decide what actually happens, just so everybody knows how big they are. So I guess my question was, those people go to school and get certified, and they have to know things like chemistry, biochemistry, biology. They have to understand pathogenesis of microbes. They have to understand, obviously, physics and calculus because it's volumetrically inclined and so on and so forth. The list goes on. So it's like getting an associate's and then a bachelor's and then a master's degree. The only difference is there's no foreign languages or humanities or social sciences. It's all science. So it's very hard, and it's quite an accomplishment, and that's why it's hard to get them certified up those levels and hard to keep them. With the descriptions that you did, do you account for those sorts of things? Because you have more than that in your department. You're a very highly certified and licensed department. Are you comfortable with the descriptions you've created, or is that what you needed a little bit more time with, or can you expand on that piece?
Well, I'm comfortable with the job descriptions that we submitted. I haven't seen any. Sean mentioned that they're still doing a lot of work with them. I haven't seen any final revision or anything like that. So I was comfortable
those
with what was
descriptions
submitted.
could be tweaked, but in terms of being able to classify, being able to recruit, retain,
Sure.
and manage the department up to the level that this city expects it to be managed, is that accomplished as a framework structure under the option 3 proposal that we're looking at tonight?
What's missing for me in option 3 is the job descriptions that are different from our existing descriptions. What we did was revised our existing job descriptions to actually have our wastewater technician have the description refer to wastewater instead of something else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They mismatch all of the maintenance techs, the utility techs in water, and the utility techs in wastewater. All of my many divisions were intermingled into one job description for the title, and it didn't make sense to us. So we revised our existing job descriptions. What we don't have, and what I'm asking for the process to be after we implement 3 or something, is to create the job descriptions that aren't part of our existing structure, which is the promotional ladder. Those don't exist today. We were hoping to get that out of this exercise, but it didn't happen.
But option 3 allows you to do that. The financial piece.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And then how does that work process-wise? Maybe Mr. Knutson or Sean, does that come from your office, or does that all rely on the department head?
There's a lot of input from the department directors on that process. Once the job description gets established, and then we can move employees into those new job descriptions. For as long as I've worked here, which is 17 years, we've been in a broad-banded job titling system. So we have, for instance, in Public Works, we have a utility worker 2, and that utility worker 2, there could be 5 employees, and each one of those 5 employees does something completely different, but they all fall under the job description of utility worker 2. So in doing the study, part of the process of that is that we're looking at going in certain positions, going away from those broad-banded job titles and actually creating job descriptions that fit specifically what that particular employee does, so that it's more, it gives more of a description, and they're not all just lumped together as one job title. So that's what Mr. Frosley is referring to when he says all the positions that they had to rewrite. It's because we're requesting to go from a broad banding system to more specialized job descriptions.
So if they were dated on July of 2019, it seems like we had a whole year to be done with that.
Right, and so the date on them is based off of the PAQs. So we started this process right around this time last year with sending out those positional analysis questionnaires to the employees. Those positional analysis questionnaires went through a review process through the department, and then once they were signed off, they went over to the consultant, and then the consultant started putting together the job descriptions at that point. They did not give us job descriptions until very recently, when we sent them out to the department directors and had them take a look at them. So that's where the delay came from, that, and really caused us to be in a crunch mode here at the end of the process, when if the consultant would have provided those to us a lot earlier on in the process, we could have done that extensive work that we needed to do to them in a more timely fashion.
Got it.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So the PAQs went to the employees. They got to return those to Baker Tilly. That would have included what their thoughts were on this.
Correct.
And what was it included, the job description and their words in there?
Correct.
Okay.
So the job descriptions that got sent out to the department directors were basically a cut and paste from the PAQs, which causes a little bit of issue on our side and the employer side with looking at consistency throughout our organization with verbiage and things like that. And if a supervisor in one area has a supervisory authority, that same description of that should be on every one of the job descriptions. And how Baker Tilly did the job descriptions was they just went in, pulled the PAQ from that particular employee for that job title, cut and pasted all of the job functions that those employees put on those PAQs, and sent those job descriptions over to us. So to Mr. Frosley's point, they had to rewrite a lot of them. Positions that were the broad-banded positions, they didn't look at those PAQs individually. They lumped them all together and assumed that they all were the same job, and that's why they had to go through all of that extensive work on rewriting them, because it didn't take into consideration all of the different job tasks that a utility worker 2 might do. They just took it off of one PAQ.
Thank you. And I guess in your experience in human resources, you would probably reflect on how this is done in Fortune 500 companies or mid-sized corporations, which you could arguably say we would represent a mid-sized corporation. In engaging a consultant of this nature, then quite obviously we would have expected them at the very least to have gone out and done an analysis of similar job descriptions with the competitive cities with whom we compete for personnel. And then they would have assembled that and looked at the PAQs, and then they would have taken a hybrid of that, delivered that to the department heads, and then consulted with the department heads to make sure that was right. The correct solutions would then have been given back, and that was what HR would have approved and sent up for final analysis and inclusion into the report. It seems like a few steps got missed, or, you know, what we'll say in medicine is there's a mismatch there, and that's creating some heartache with our departments. So our departments need to have the ability, obviously, to make those changes. So if they do that and they make those changes, then that's the department heads getting to make that decision. And then they bring that, I assume, back to the HR director for approval? Okay. I was just curious about that. I wanted to be sure. And then I was looking at your report here. I was like, I love spreadsheets. I work with the little buggers all day. and I noticed that there were 72 items on the bottom one and 72 items on the top one. I didn't have time to go through every single thing. But I started at the low, and then I went to the high, and I noticed that on some of the high numbers, we got a match. On the low, we got a different match. So these are two different scales, obviously, with a lot of similar descriptions. Can you tell me which part is it that people just generally agree with, that they like when we talk about the description of the new range that you want to see? And I assume you're comfortable with it too as the HR director. So that's why I wanted, could you expand on that a little?
So in the
Mr.
packet
Mayor.
that you're-
Probably see me over
you
here
done with
doing
me?
this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are we talking about Appendix 2 salary survey?
Yes, so those two documents that you were just scrolling at, not, okay, so that is just the ranges, the one that you're looking at right there.
That's
is-
the ranges.
just
Yeah,
the
I see that. It's listed ranges. We got a
Correct.
percentage between grades, a range, and a midpoint.
Correct.
Good. That's easy to understand. Our columns are 1 through 72. We end at police lieutenant.
And that is just our ranges, so that does not put the job titles into that range. That's what that second that you're looking at there, that puts the position titles in the ranges with their job families.
Okay, so at the
Councilmember
end of the day, I
Groh,
do
if you
notice
may.
that's probably better for everybody.
Just real quick, if you can slow down just so we can follow along. You're scanning on a screen and we don't know where you're at.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, just keep us.
I'm on the one with the. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns with a pretty 20% blue on the left and filters on the top.
So he's looking at the Baker-Tilly report and the appendices in the Baker-Tilly report.
Yeah, it's like the bottom document at the very, very end.
Yeah, the last 4 pages.
So this is like the coup de grace. This is, at the end of the day, where you got to explain to people what's in their paycheck. This column, this worksheet, if you will.
This is the new ranges, so what the implementation options is how the employees are going to be placed within those new ranges.
Okay, all right. So if I was understanding the Director of Public Works correctly, he might have to tweak some of these names and descriptions, but generally speaking, and I'm just going to use utility worker number 2.
Okay.
Right? Generally speaking, if you had people that he was going to have in there and had to change descriptions, we would still agree with these numbers.
Correct.
Oh, well then, quite frankly, that's quite easy. You got to give them the ability to change the descriptions and make that align. That's just good housekeeping, frankly. As long as the numbers are easy to get along with, that's almost like closing on a minor point. So my question then, if we get along on those numbers, then where was the rub? Is my understanding the rub was for people for compaction, it was the variation, if you will. So some people would, and I've seen this before in other companies, you do this job A for 5 years, and then you get promoted because you're really good. You do job B for 5 years. But the market changes and job A kind of creeps up to what job B is. Anyways, you start getting a little bit compacted. And then when you give out a percentage adjustment based on time in category, then the person who started out sooner is going to wind up jumping over you or being right on you. And that's not actually fair, or I would say ethical or moral. We don't want to do that to employees. That's not, it won't do. I mean, we don't want that. So what we want to do to solve that is by increasing the percentage in terms of how many years they've served us loyally as an employee. Now, it costs a little bit more money to do that, but it's equitable. It's fair. It solves for compaction. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Correct. That is the majority of the issue with the placement of the employees in the new ranges are the compaction that it does create, because that 0.5% doesn't really give enough in between those years of service to push the mid-range employees higher up into that new scale to address that compaction issue. So that's why the department directors went back and have a new proposal on the table.
Right. So then finally, one more little point to tie in. And I think now that we've unpacked some of the fine tuning of the numbers, we understand that when we go to page 9 and we look at the regression analysis that they did on the basis of the survey midpoints for all the other communities we looked at, and then they did a regression analysis, the analysis they came up with has a confidence rate of 0.9899. Granted, the sample size isn't the biggest in the world, but 0.9899 will get you published in a journal 10 out of 10 times. That's a good regression calculation, and I looked at that and I asked when they made their presentation, is that in fact what you did? And they said, yes, that's what we did.
Right.
So that's probably why, no matter who you call in those sample size of cities and get the low and the high range and the median, you figure it out. Guess what? When you got a 98% confidence in a regression analysis, that's what they're going to find out. It doesn't lie. You can call them, you can ask them all day long. You're going to get the same answer, unless you get somebody in a really bad mood. So that's why everybody agrees with all that piece. So it seems to me that like the easy piece to solve for now is, do we do it as in grade or years of service as a percentage multiplier? And what is that number? That's like 2 small points.
Yeah, the options there, Mr. Grote, on option 3.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about.
That's
so.
a beautiful thing.
All right, let's go ahead. This is a public, Judge Colley? Yes.
Mayor, Council, I actually just wanted to take my mask off for a while and didn't want
I thought that's what
Chief
Greg
to-
wanted to do too.
Didn't want
he
Chief
just
to
said
arrest
he
me
made it.
because I had
Yeah.
taken it off improperly. Just wanted to address and make clear for the record that this it does not adequately reflect what we are asking for as a court. There's a reclass that we are asking for that's about $500, and then depending on what is decided on how to address years in service. The issue that we have is that if we use years in service, that's different from years or time in seat or time in current job description. For the court, given what happened last year, everybody has less than a year or will be a year, even though they may have worked for the city and for years. So most of our employees run in the 4 to 12-year range. We've got one that's over 20, and we've got a couple that are at 1 or 2 years. Most of our employees are 5 to 12 years, and they're going to get a 1% increase because they only have 1 year on the job. So, and I understand that that is what it is, but I just want to make sure you folks understand that for across the board for our department, it will have an effect depending on how it's decided to address that issue. You know, our employees are great employees, and they want to stay, but they want to feel needed, and I think that's really what it comes down to is you know, I've given all this time, and I'm getting 1% increase. There, you know, part of that is that when we did do that, we did some market studies, and they came in. If you look at our employees, I think there's only 3. Sean, you can correct me on this. I think there are 3 that are outside of the range, below the range. Most of them are within that range. But then what do we do about the time that they've served the city? And that's the issue that we have as a court, and how we address that, you know, will be what it is. I wanted to make a comment on my perception of the process, how it's been, and I wanted to compare it to, if you folks know Calvin and Hobbes, the cartoon strip. Calvin comes up with this transmogrifier, where you throw a whole bunch of things into this box, and then something comes out, and we don't know what happened in there, but this neat project comes out on the outside of that. I really feel like, especially with what Baker Tilly has done, that's what's happened, is that we threw some things into this box with neat coloring on it, and then this thing came out, and we don't have any idea how it came out, or how that matches what we know is happening in our departments. And I think that's been my frustration. Is that I have no idea what was happening inside that box. And we got the information 2 weeks ago from Baker Tilly about the wage survey. Well, there were only 3 courts that actually responded, and they responded specifically to a courtroom clerk. So everything that happened in the court and all of the levels that we got were based on 3 responses to a courtroom clerk. And so, you know, there are a lot of issues here. I can tell you that I'm, for the most part, okay, like everybody's saying, I'm okay where we are with the market adjustment. It's just that next step and that next part and how we're able to do that. And so I just wanted to present that to you folks. Also, maybe a bit of a clarification. We as department heads make recommendations, but we don't get to make the final decision. And that's the way that it is. You know, we will make recommendations, and then that final decision comes from where it comes from. And I just, there's the sense that maybe we get to say what happens in that part with our departments, and we will make the recommendations, and we will make, you know, the argument for that recommendation, but we don't get to make that final decision.
Yeah, so with the market wages, when the court deconsolidated last August, didn't we bring everyone up to market wage at that time?
Right, and that's why I'm saying that
Don't
for
forget
the
about all the details though, so that's important to
yes,
say. So
and I
that
no, I
happened
did
last
say that.
August.
That for the most part, we did that study, and where we ended up is appropriate based on what they're saying now, for the most part. But my point is that you've got that, and then everybody else is saying, well, how do we place people within that band? And I'm saying that how we place people within that band will across the board affect our court differently than our department differently than every other department because of that.
Because you're ahead of everybody else.
Well, except that we're not. So if we had done this last year, the clerk that has 20 years of experience would have gotten a 10% increase last year, not just to market, but a 10% increase. Under the current plan, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a 1% increase. So yes, that's true, but that wasn't taken into account a year ago, and so now a year later, it's just that 1% or that half percent or whatever.
Yeah, that
it
makes
is.
sense. Okay.
Can I jump in to clarify?
Yes.
Isn't that the whole, and I think this is where we're confusing our option threes again, from Baker Tilly option 3 at a 0.5% for all the years, that it kind of works, but it doesn't, to our new option 3 is you as a director, as a department head, taking this range and giving a presentation or giving your report to, I think this person with the 10 years should be here, and you put that together based on the ranges that you think they need to be at with the money from Baker Tilly, or with the money from the recommendation that we had started with, and then any additional. So like I said, that 0.5% is something, if I'm understanding right, is something you can choose to incorporate when you give your side, but you don't have to. If that 10-year person should be at that 10 level and that's your budget, you can do that though.
Yes, and what I'm saying is I can choose to present that, yes.
Yes, okay. I just want to make sure that
I can choose to say, this is what I would like to have happen in my department. I cannot choose to make that happen.
Yeah, but what's happening here, Councilmember Dolan, is this would be a 0.5% increase per year of service with a 1% minimum.
If we were
so
doing
no matter what, no, that's based on what this is option 3 as well. So it would be the current proposed of the $19,992 for courts, which in this case would only give 1% increase to the judge's staff, right?
But Mayor, if I can, and then I think part of the conversation is with the $19,000 was the budget number that was coming from Baker Tilly, how to address courts. That was their recommendation. So now with the direction coming from council in terms of option 3, let's take a look at the department heads. Let's let the magistrate take a look at the needs within his specific department and provide that recommendation. So that's not going to be reflected necessarily in that 19,000, but it is reflected in the direction that council would give to the team to work those out. And the conversations that we've had is with the magistrate and with you, Mitch, is let's identify what we need to address it, and then what we have to do within the parameters and the resources of the city. So so that's the caveat. So how can we address it, but how can we find a way with all the things in conversations with revenues and savings account and checking account and all those things, how do we find a way to absorb it within the budget, given all the things that are occurring? But yeah, so the 19,000, I think Mitch is going to come back and at a later time and say, hey, this is how we want to address it. But that's the feedback we get from council, and then that can occur. So that's what we're thinking about here.
And best case scenario for us would add another 7,000 onto that. So just so you folks have something to see when you're looking at that.
Which my understanding is that's what we're supposed to do is we, I understand, we want you to do that, like police, for example, if they feel that we need to, I need to shore up this area, so I need to pull and do some things and change some things. I mean, a training budget's only so good if you keep people, but if you replace somebody that you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in training, so if they need to use their training budget to get everyone at this level, like I said, it is a double-edged sword, if we're going to believe, if we have to cut certain officers' positions or not cut, but the ones we don't have filled, or depending on how we look at this, if we're cutting into a training budget so we can spend more now to shore up our payroll, that's what the department heads, like I said, I want the department heads to fight for what they think is important. If you have money in the budget and you want to move it to here, I want to hear, I think that's what the department head should be doing is, well, we need to spend money on this, and I'd much rather, spend a little bit much money on training, because then I'm going to retrain these people, and every time I lose somebody. And same thing with you. I mean, if it's 20,000, but if you honestly feel the courts has a system where we where we keep going through people. If we have high turnovers in certain departments, well then obviously the system we have isn't working, so we need to change it up a little bit. And that's where, like I said, you don't want us getting in there being, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? You know, I want the department heads to fight for what they think. And like I said, it's also Jess's job to be the guy at top to being like, wait a minute, you know, like I said, he's the guy with the pizza and everybody wants a piece of pizza. Well, you know, there's only so much to go around. And, but like I said, within your area, you know, you guys need to decide if the money for police cars is not as important at the moment than shoring up your folks, or same thing with fire, that I feel as a department head, you have to have control of your department to do that and to make those recommendations and to push that. You know, fire is the same thing. Every department, public works, I mean, we put Greg in there to do it. We got to give him all the tools, and we can't be like, well, you can't. And I think in the past, well, you can't touch payroll because payroll is a system that we kind of have, and it's, so everything but payroll you can do, and you can put requests in, but payroll is kind of separate. Well, I think we have to include payroll in that because it's, and I think that's what we're doing here is, so please let us know if there are areas that need to be fixed with payroll and with, you know, then include that in that, because I think that's what we need to hear and we need to see, so.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Knight.
Yeah, if I may, Judge Kay, thank you. As we've been saying, one size doesn't fit all, and I totally understand what you're saying. You have employees that have been with the city anywhere from 1 year to 20 years, but on paper, they've only been with the city for a year. So that's where you have to fix that.
Right.
So,
And I
because
just wanted
one
to make
size
sure
doesn't fit all. So whatever we do, it'll be up to you to take care of those employees, because in reality, they fall somewhere in that range, and you're the one that has to put them in that range.
Right.
Because we all know every one of those employees hasn't only been with the city for a year. It was the deconsolidation that we went through that changed that. So totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, and well, for the record, we do believe that employee's been with Lake Havasu City for 20 years, just in the current position for a year. So it's not like they started all over. They're just in their current position for 1 year.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, they've been with the city still for 20 years. But,
Correct. Never break in.
Tilly,
Yes.
Yeah,
never
the Baker
break in.
Tilly suggestion was 0.5% per year of service in current position.
In current position.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that it's not like we restarted them over.
Right.
But just that was the Baker Tilly recommendation, which obviously we don't like them. So, we're going to go with a different option. So,
Great.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other department directors? Yeah, Chief Doyle.
Mayor, Council, I bet Chief Palafis that we'd be here till after 8, so I don't want to lose $5. No, I think we've probably done plenty of beating up on the consultant. I think we all agreed we're probably never going to hire him again. I want to know how Greg got 2 hours with the consultant, because that's probably 10 times what the rest of us got with him. I agree with step 3 and or option 3. We came up at the police department, we came up with a solution that would much better serve our department. So thank you. I appreciate you doing this and taking a look at it. But I also think it's important that this whole thing kind of, from a leadership angle, doesn't instill confidence in our employees of what's gone on. So I think from this point on out, we really need to be cognizant of the fact that, you know, sometimes they say you can shed light on incompetence or you can prove you're incompetent. And I think we as leaders need to make sure our employees know that we're not. We can say, hey, bad consultant, but we need to move on. We need to ensure our employees that we can do this. We need to get it done as quickly as possible and understand their concerns. At the police department, the concern was combining of bands. We had such a drastic change in the market. 25% on my police officer, 25% below market. So when you say, why do we have to spend so much on the police department? It's because we are bringing police officers almost a 25% increase that they were under market. Which my problem with that was taking a 5-year officer saying you're 25% below market at the top, 18% at the bottom, and we're going to give you a 2.5%, and please don't go somewhere else. You know, we're still in a position when we talk about retention is that we still have some of our comparable cities that an officer, a 10-year officer, can lateral over that department and still advance up to $10,000 more a year because of their process of how they move through the pay scale. So we still have another hurdle to go through on how we are going to move people through the pay scale, because when it comes to retention, that also can be a concern. So a lot of times people say, well, why are police officers and firefighters so, typically in public safety is very pro on step systems. And they want to know, how do you move through the step system? How long is it going to take me to get to the top? And I talked to a number of you, and I got a lot of questions about why would you ever want to get to the top of your pay scale? Well, if two of us take a job starting at the same amount of money, I can get to the top of my pay scale in 10 years, but it takes you 20 years. Who made more money at the end of 20 years? They want to know how their career is going to progress and kind of where they're going to be by the time they get to their retirement. Now, whether you agree with that philosophy or not, if that's what your comparable cities are doing, they're going to do the math and say, if I jump to a comparable city, where will I be in 10 years? Is it going to take me 25 years to get to the top of my pay scale with Lake Havasu? Or is it? So that's why it's important with the employees when they're looking at those things of how we move through the pay scale. Again, I'm happy with the pay scales that we've set up. I have some issues, and I've met with Sean, and we're dealing with some of the other positions. I just totally lost the word. We're contesting. We're appeal. We've lodged an appeal, and we're working through that process. So, but I think that the next thing we need to show the employees is we really need to get to that next step, get this locked in, get to that next step, and say, how are you going to move? Because that's the biggest question I get is, how are we going to move? How are we going to move through it? I just think we need to get this done, and we need to make sure we understand what the employees want. They've been waiting a long time. We started this process August. I think our first meeting was in August of last year with the consultant. We kind of kicked off in June. Go back a year prior to that, the employees have been waiting for this. So I didn't make it to 8 o'clock, but thank you.
Thank you. Chief Palafis?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Coming here 4 months, I figured you gave me a lot of challenges, and this is a pretty big one. But I have to say, at the end of the day, working with staff and working with Jess, coming up with ideas, and fighting for my employees, especially as a new chief. May 23rd, 2018, when you were sitting in this room, I watched it, and you gave direction to fix compression and the market study. I agree. The Baker-Tilly study provided us one thing, gave us ranges. Now we can work with that. What we have to do is actually just move forward. And I appreciate the option of giving us department directors coming up with ideas, and I've worked with my team to achieve that. And I appreciate that opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity for Jess listening to us and Sean for listening to us and going forward with this. I think we have a solid solution that will bring everybody to market and reduce compaction, exactly what you wanted to do almost 2 years ago. So I wanted to keep it short, but since Chief Doyle came up, I had to come up. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You still have 9 minutes.
Yeah. We're going to get past 8, so yeah, we don't have the call to public yet, or the public hearing. So with that being said, well, let's go. Oh, any other department directors before? All right, so we will go ahead. This is a public hearing, so we'll open up the public hearing. Again, we are receiving public comments via email at cityclerk@lhcaz.gov, so we do have some of those, but we'll open up to anyone in the room that would like to address council on this matter at this time. Yeah.
Good evening, Council. I know everybody in the city has been dealing with the same problem, including us. We have employees choosing to move to Kingman and Hackberry, and I'll tell you why. I've taken these reports that we got from the PED. The PED has done a labor market report that has been outstanding for the city. And it's very dire actually. I'll give you an example. If you look at housing, what do we all want to do? We want to live in a house. And what we did is we compared all those numbers to cities, let's say in Phoenix, that we thought were comparable. And when we asked the other night, when we asked the lady, I don't remember her name, who did the report for us, what were the criteria? And it was the airport size of community, do we have a fire? One thing they never brought up was housing prices. So in the labor market report from the PED that just came out, well, the actual data is dated 2017 through a Zillow. Arizona's overall housing average back in that day was 257,000. Mojave County was 230,000. And Lake Havasu housing costs are 280,000. So that looks like, even though you took those numbers of Arizona cities, housing costs are already in Lake Havasu City 8% above that. In Mojave County, they're 20% higher than that. So of course, wouldn't one of my employees right now want to sell a house in Havasu and move to Kingman at one of our mechanics and get paid the same amount there? In the meantime, we're now trying to readjust all these steps and departments like you guys are talking about. Like if you live in Havasu, we've never had to do this before, not because it's the housing costs, the direness of this, which even more concerning on page 23 of the PED's labor market report, which I have been given out to my corporate friends and managers so that they could send it up to corporate so they can tell their corporations why Lake Havasu City is so unique to us and why some of these analysis or outsourcing consultants sometimes don't work for everybody. And this one is really concerning. If you look at a general operations manager in Lake Havasu City, they make $69,350. Phoenix Mesa, $91,444, which we've already discussed. They have an 8% lower housing price. Why wouldn't you go? I would go. And then Las Vegas, Nevada, which is even more dire, is up to $108,000 they pay for that same person. Their housing prices is approximately back to the Mojave County rate of 20% less. I don't want to get up here and start telling you guys, I know you guys did an amazing job, but this is the one piece of the puzzle I haven't heard about. And it's the piece of the puzzle I've been driving through our company on how we can keep and acquire and attain people here. Because the American dream is to own a home. And it even tells you rent prices or, the rental, and they're even worse than the actual housing prices. So I'm sorry to say that the situation is incredibly dire. It is to us in the city. And we keep talking about we need to bring better paying jobs, or maybe we need to just start educating our corporations and our businesses here in town. If we're going to move forward and retain employees, we need to look at this study. And this was one of the best things one about the second meeting I went to the PED. I have been bragging about this report coming out of the PED for I think like $25,000. And I think it says a lot. It does to me, and I hope it does to you. And if you guys haven't seen it, I recommend all department heads, everybody to take a look at it, read through it. It's 24 pages of incredibly great reading. But thank you guys for all you're doing. This is really hard and difficult changing times, and hiring outside sources sometimes come back and bite us in the butt, and this is a good example of that. But thank you again for all you're doing. I look forward to joining you soon.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council on this matter?
Good evening. I don't have a prepared statement. I just want to make a couple comments. I've spoken enough over the last couple of years, and I think everybody knows how I feel as far as representing the police officers through our associations, whether it's been the Lake Havasu Police Officers Association or now we've switched to the Fraternal Order of Police. So this has been a long process. I think a lot of people are frustrated, obviously. There's been enough mudslinging and stuff at the consultant. I feel like this was always just a real simple solution as far as just the police department, and it got complex somehow. I really do feel that the current range that was presented by Baker Tilly was a range that anybody could have gone out and got. And it is a range that I honestly feel could fit in our current 10-step system. I've mentioned it before, as public safety, we like the 10 steps. We would actually even prefer it to be less, because some agencies have 8 steps. We have no concern about reaching the top of our pay grade. Yeah, it was mentioned earlier, 75 employees are topped out employees. And I would just honestly say, nicely say, who cares? Those employees are reaching and making the most money that they can make. And so that's our goal, is to reach a level that we are able to sufficiently provide for our families and things, and getting to that top out range as fast as you can is very helpful in that. And it also helps our retirement. But the biggest thing is that, you know, with the police department, we are so far out of range. The numbers are what they are. They don't lie. I don't want to come across as an association or a representative that we're just here to whine all the time, or that we're always just not satisfied, or we're overreacting, or we're just never pleased with what's going on. That's not the case at all. And I just want to make that clear, that the numbers are what they are. And I really do appreciate Chief Doyle coming up with this kind of last minute, like, hey, we've almost got an emergency here with what Baker Tilly presented, and he makes this proposal. But I just want to make sure that it's clear that his proposal is trying to work within his current budget, and it doesn't fully address the shortcomings within the police officer range. It's a good step. I would like to see almost like a Cadillac proposal of, what if money wasn't an option, what would it take to get our officers to where they should be based off their years of service? To me, as a 5-year officer who is currently at mid-range of the current pay scale, it's hard for me to not imagine why that officer is not going to the mid-range of the new scale that's being implemented. And that's not happening. It's not happening. It's not coming close to happening that. Why an officer that's been here for 23 years is not going to be topped out on the new pay scale? It's just unheard of. And so it's hard to stay competitive with some of these other agencies that are doing things to stay competitive within their step system. So that's just something I want to continue to think about. Again, we fully support and agree with the chief's proposal. I do want to make mention that it's costing us 2 more officers for that position, for that to happen. We're going to lose 2 more officers because he's having to shore up. And he's also, I was reading it today, he's also willing to forego his pay increase this year to make this happen. And so, it's just mind-boggling to me. I understand budgets. I understand we have revenue deficits, but we're buying courthouses. We're doing all these things with this CARES Act money that we got. There's a lot, seems to be resources for other things, but we're constantly over the years, the last 10 years, been asked to cut our budgets. We got to stay within the budgets, and I know there's talk about working to help generate new revenues in the future, but we're in a position now that I think we need to act now, and we need to get this in place now, and then hopefully in the next couple of years be able to find revenue that continues this forward. But I honestly feel this is a pivotal moment for our police department, for the city, and I just hope you take all of that into consideration. Thank you.
Mike, what doesn't it solve? So you said it doesn't solve something within the ranges. It's not solved. What's not solved?
Okay, so I'll explain a little bit. So as it's been mentioned, so the bottom, according to what's the implementation of the new range, so the bottom scale of police officer is moving up from 47,000 to 55,000. So that's a 17.76% increase. So those brand new officers right now are going to get a 17.76% increase. That's great for them. That's what's to be expected because they are 17.76% behind market average. As the scale progresses, if you were to just simply take the new pay range and plug it into our current 10-step system and equally divide each step from 55,000 to the new 80,000 top, every position, that whole range is anywhere from 17.76% up to, at the top end, 25%. So when you're looking at like a 5-year officer right now that's at mid-range, is at step 5 of our current step, and you were just to kind of try to take that range now and move it within 10 steps, he's really like 21% behind market average right now as a 5-year officer in comparison to the other cities. And with this Baker Tilly proposal, that officer was going to get a 2.5% raise. So all I'm getting at, I guess, is the range, how far under market average the police officer is from 17.76 to 25% is for every officer. Every officer is underpaid that much. Yet we're picking and choosing, I guess almost that the bottom guys are going to get 17.76%. 5-year guy is going to get 2.5%. You know, so the range is the entire range.
So you're focused on the option we're not focused on right now. So
What's
we're
that?
focused on option 3, which I think does solve that issue.
So it will not solve it. It helps narrow that gap, but it doesn't fully address it. So we'll have officers now, I think, I don't know all the ins and outs of the chief's proposal. It is a very good proposal, but I would say it's probably a 50% adjustment, is not on every position, but like a 5-year officer, from what I understand, is maybe going to get an 8%. Well, that 5-year officer really is 20% behind average. So he's going to get an 8%. When I look at this and I look at the 10-step system, and I could plug in numbers to a new 10-step system, I would guess to get officers to market average is about just the officer level is probably more like a $630,000 investment. That's just what it is. Those are the numbers. The numbers don't lie. If you wanted to plug every officer where they are now in their current step into a new step in a 10-step system, it would probably cost about $630,000 just at the officer level. And then we got to think about sergeant and lieutenant, which there's far less of them in those positions. So we fully expected as officers, I'll just go back to the 5-year officer. The 5-year officer under this entire time expected that, okay, I'm mid-range now in the current system. I'm going to go to mid-range now in the new pay range, and that's not happening. So again, this year I don't know how to move forward. If the city really wants to invest the funds to get officers to market average, then I think that's something to look at. If management's happy with the chief's plan, I think our officers would be happy with the chief's plan this year, understanding that there's still opportunities for those officers, especially in the 5-year to 10-year range, to decide, okay, maybe I'm still going to go somewhere else. It just is what it is. We're that far behind. And so, I don't know. Does that make sense?
I appreciate that.
Can I just make a clarification?
Yes.
Just for those at home? Because I've talked with Michael with the association. Now, when we say we're losing 2 officers, I don't think people really like who's going to let go. But I think I found it interesting, and Chief gave me these numbers. Pre the recession until 2007, I believe we were at 96 officers. After the recession kicked in, we went to, I believe it was 83 paid positions. And then a few years in, or a little bit in, we went to 80 plus 3, correct me if I'm wrong, meaning the 3 are unpaid, I guess because we couldn't fill them as well, but they were unfunded, I guess is the right terminology. And now we're at 80. So when we talk about losing 2 officers, we'd be going to 78. Now, with that in mind, we currently have, from my understanding, from the reports I've seen, we currently have 6 positions that we have open. It's also my understanding, if we looked at that average, we always have positions open that we can't fill. Just my business perspective is that's a problem, because you're not paying enough to bring people in at that level. And then you factor in the last so many months of the world coming at us, it gets a little more cloudy and difficult. But also the mid-range people, if we're having laterals move out, bringing someone, it's not just a matter of bringing someone up to the bottom and having them working their way up. It's if we lose people in the middle, lose a detective, or use someone that has all that training. And that's where, like I said, I give all my biggest point in this is the chief needs to be able to do that. And if the chief feels right now this is the best we can do with the money we have, I support that. But I also expect it to be what's next, because we like I said, if this isn't enough, it doesn't really matter what we say. If this isn't enough, we're going to see it in the numbers. We're going to see that, well, to say, well, that'll fix it. You do it. Well, how long will you know? 24 hours? Okay. We'll come back 24 hours later. Oh, we didn't fix it. No, but I said it was going to be fixed. Well, that doesn't matter. I mean, we're going to see it in the numbers. But like I said, I think we do need a starting point, and I do think the chief's recommendations is a good starting point. But I want people to understand that too, is we're not letting two people go. We're basically moving money from what we've had to reserve as part of the system to positions we can't even fill. And other departments, like I said, apples to oranges, other departments don't necessarily have that situation. So, we do need to look at each department differently. And like I said, you don't want me getting into this. You want the chief and you want the other department heads and the city manager to be able to do this. But like I said, we also only have so much money available. I would love to be a little bit irresponsible, be like, we got money in the bank, let's fix it, let's do it. But we're talking also salaries, which continue to go up every year, and it's it's not just a one-time purchase. So I just want people to have that perspective of how that's just as an example on the police department. If you want to add anything or
No, I
clarify.
fully agree. They are current open positions that we're just going to forego. So yeah, we're not laying two guys off in order to fund other people.
And I don't minimize it in any way. I mean, that's a sad situation to begin with, but we're limiting two positions that we can't even fill because we have pay issues. So it's just that, like I said, it's a different perspective to it. Is we can't even fill those positions, but now we're going to eliminate the money we set aside for those positions. But yeah, let's roll it back up and fill so the middle's stronger. But like I said, each department's different. Maybe a first-year accountant and a third-year accountant, their CPA, the range is a little bit different. First-year police officer versus a fifth-year police, there's different ranges. Police does different stuff, fire does different. So it's hard to really have a total fair one answer to everything. And I just think that's something we need to keep in mind when and I think as the business side, sometimes I'm oblivious and shocked to how government sometimes works or municipalities. But in the business, it's like you have a problem, you need to fix it. And if I look at our payroll problem, is we do have big problems. Everyone should be at market value, yes. But if we can't even get people to fill those positions, and we keep losing positions and can't fill them, some positions we lose, we fill. We have an experience level problem, but at least we're full. Other departments, like yours, for example, and I think Public Works, we do have those holes because we're just not paying them. They get to that level and then they go somewhere else. So. Right. Just to share that, like I said, money, it all comes down to money. And like I said, and with what the departments are doing, this is really just a balance of resources. If the chief feels that we need to spend more if he has 5 people, that might be looking to go somewhere else, he knows those 5 people and he needs to know where to put them in a band, where they're going to stay. And if that's something we have to go in the bank to save, just the training in those 5 people is very important. But like I said, shouldn't be my decision. That's the chief needs to say, this is important. Like, I can save money by hiring these people right now. Same thing with water. If we don't have the right people in the right positions, for me, a cost of doing business is someone takes a sandwich or drives away with a $75 tank of fuel. I mean, cost of business and with you guys is water breaks. If someone's not doing their job and we miss something, we have infrastructure problems. It's a big problem. So
yeah, and I don't want to come up here and act like I'm against the chief's proposal at all. That's not the point. We fully back what he's presented. The administration and the police department is very capable of knowing what their officers need. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that it doesn't quite fully address how underpaid the officers are. I think it's going to make officers, for the most part, very happy, the chief's proposal. But there is still going to be a shortcoming as far as how far under market average they are. Because it just, the amount that it would take to fully address that is probably more than the council's willing to spend, and it's just not in the budget, obviously, this year.
Or at this moment willing to spend. But yeah. Like I said, I think we definitely realize it's there, and I don't mean to take away from it. I do agree with you. It is a problem that we need to work towards, and I thank you for your words.
And I do think also as far as just add to it, the new starting salary for the police officer is a very good salary. When it comes to having 6 open positions right now, with this new salary, we actually might be able to fill those 6 open positions. But we're already a department that has 10 officers at current step 1 of the police scale. That's how many new officers we have in the department right now. And then it really the middle of our department right now is very slim in numbers. And then we have, there's probably 7 or so guys at the top end that are coming in within their last few years of reaching retirement. So the starting, I don't think in the future we'll have a problem filling positions as with new hires, but it's trying to take care of that middle ground right now that are our FTOs, that are our training officers, that are on the SWAT team, that are very important officers to our organization and are going to be training the new guys that I'm concerned about. I just hope the best. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council?
Allow me to kick this horse one more time and back up my brother in blue. Mayor and members of council, first and foremost, thank you for identifying the need for a dedicated work session. If I may offer some context to frame our perspective. Your Lake Havasu firefighters are merely seeking a comparable market wage. No one wants California or Las Vegas wages. We're simply trying to match our comparable Arizona cities. 3 separate studies now have identified Lake Havasu City firefighters and all those positions that they do not compete with our comparable cities. We fully support the new proposal. We believe the new proposal works within current fiscally responsible boundaries to establish comparable salary ranges and create separation based on years of service to help address compression. A really great start. However, it is not comprehensive. What it does not do, for example, is compare an apple to an apple, as a metaphor. Meaning, it does not compare a 14-year Avondale firefighter, one of our comparable cities, to a 14-year Lake Havasu City firefighter. Nor does it address a myriad of other benefits our comparable cities offer. I remind you this not to sound ungrateful, but to point out, if we do not continue to prioritize wages and progression, we may never actually compete. This is the first council to collectively unite on this issue, and we thank you all for your continued efforts to right the wrong, and our fire department leadership for their work and the example they've set on the new proposal. Your Lake Havasu professional firefighters.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council on this matter? All right, I will turn it over to Ms. Williams. We have 5 comments that we received via email at cityclerk@lhcaz.gov.
Yes, thank you. First comment was submitted on Thursday, August 27, 2020, with the subject line of positional analysis. Lake Havasu City Council and staff, kudos to all of you for staying the course to get this positional analysis in place. I know you feel it is not perfect, but you get 80% of the results with 20% of the effort. It can be improved over time. You knew, and all citizens knew, we needed to get this done. Even 2 years ago, it was well known that we had a compaction problem. Some people wanted to deal with the public safety departments first, but special thanks to the new city manager who wanted to have a comprehensive analysis of all departments. It took a little longer, but to single out 1 or 2 departments and ignore the rest would have been a slap in the face to all other employees. So I personally feel you did this correctly. Thanks also to the employees who have waited so patiently for this process to be completed. We appreciate all that you do for us. Submitted by John Parrott. This comment was received on Thursday, August 27, 2020, with the subject line of call to the public and public hearing regarding item 5.1, tonight's work session agenda. Honorable Mayor and Council members, I am writing to express my support for the Lake Havasu City Firefighters Association regarding their recommendations stemming from the recent completed salary survey. I am confident that our city's leadership understands the importance of attracting and retaining the most talented public safety personnel, and compensation is a major consideration for all professionals. Please listen to those that are most impacted by your decisions regarding this issue. They, along with your tax-paying constituents, are counting on your judgment. Sincerely, submitted by Steve Party. This comment was received on Thursday, August 27, 2020, with the subject line of ID 20-2522, presentation, discussion, and potential direction to staff regarding the positional analysis. Good evening, council members. My name is Stephanie Hoffman, and I am a forensic scientist that has held a number of positions with various forensic law enforcement and academic institutions over the last 15 years. I have been a crime scene technician with the Lake Havasu City Police Department for a little over 5 years now, and requests to reclassify my position were previously submitted by command staff before the positional analysis was ever mentioned. I have been waiting a number of years at this point to receive an updated job description and salary grade reflective of my duties, and that additionally meets the minimum professional standards and both market and salary data for my field, forensic science. Throughout the positional analysis process, I have repeatedly sent reclassification and job description revisions, along with ample evidence to support said changes that have been forwarded by command staff to Baker Tilly, Human Resources, and the city manager. I also know that the police chief has had multiple discussions highlighting the issues that remain in my current job description, draft, and salary grade. While command staff have lobbied for the requested revisions on multiple occasions, it is clear that it has been ignored or dismissed by Human Resources and the city manager. I've included my most recent request for review and reconsideration form that city employees were given limited time to complete before the Baker Tilly presentation and report were released, and supporting evidence for your review. Upon consideration of said material, if you feel that those revisions are justified, I urge you to direct Human Resources and the city manager to implement them in an effort to recruit and, more importantly, retain an employee with the requisite knowledge, skills, abilities, and expertise to meet the demands of the position and field. This is a singular position where there is no other forensic scientist on staff to advise or supervise you. It is therefore vital that the minimum professional qualifications and standards be mandated and upheld. After reviewing the Baker Tilly report, I noted that only 4 cities were used to calculate the crime scene analyst's new title, salary grade, and that the specific positions and cities were not stated or provided by Human Resources upon my request. This is alarming, as 50% of our new market cities have more senior or supervisory roles that more closely resemble this position, and its minimum educational, certification, and experiential requirements. In addition, some of the entry-level positions at said cities are also more of a property and evidence tech type position that is significantly different from that of a forensic scientist crime scene. I wonder if any of the department heads or other employees were able to verify whether equivalent positions were actually assessed by Baker Tilly. I would also like to note that I was able to source job descriptions and salary grades from all 10 of our market cities included at the link below, so I do not understand why they only had data from 8 cities for most positions and only 4 for mine. I also found it odd that the educational, certification, experiential, and supervisory requirements were not included in the salary grade table. If they were, you would note that there were many positions, both within and above my position's grade, that only require a high school diploma. Other positions that require an associate's or bachelor's degree that are not supervisory in nature have also been placed above my grade as well. Numerous professional organizations, board certifying bodies, scientific working group documents, and other peer-reviewed publications in my field mandate a minimum of a Bachelor's of Science degree, forensic sciences is preferred, relevant forensic certifications in a number of subdisciplines, and preferably a Master of Science in Forensic Sciences. I would encourage you to compare my job description draft and suggested revisions to the only other scientist in the city, chemist, that requires a BS in chemistry, fewer certifications, and that supervises 2 people. For some unknown reason, no market city data was utilized to calculate the chemist's salary grade. There are a number of other positions where the market data was not used as well, one of which had only 4 responses like mine. How were their grades determined? Perhaps the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that provides national and state mean and median salary ranges. Those are just some of the issues that I have noted in Baker Tilly's report in regards to my position. If you wish to discuss them further, please feel free to review the linked material and/or contact me. I appreciate your time and consideration and sincerely hope that every employee
and department head is given the opportunity to verify these results and facilitate revisions as necessary. Submitted by Stephanie Hoffman. This comment was received on Thursday, August 27th, 2020. Good evening. I would like to thank the council for giving us an opportunity to provide comments related to the position analysis. It appears the current proposal is missing recognition for employees that haven't seen a step increase in years. Currently, there are approximately 75 employees, which is roughly 25% of the full-time staff, that have been at the top of their band and grade for roughly 5 years. With the exception of public safety, the city has not completed a full market analysis for many years. While the position analysis has brought to light the positions that are below market, it hasn't addressed employees that haven't seen any increases for years. As employees were receiving step increases averaging between 3 to 4 annually, the employees that were topped out didn't receive anything, including a cost of living increase. A solution to resolve this going into the new positional analysis pay structure could be to provide the employees that haven't seen an increase receive a CPI adjustment about 5 years in addition to the 0.5% per year currently included in the plan. This would, at the very least, assist in showing recognition to the employees that did not receive market adjustments as our policy states. Submitted by Sandy McCormick. This comment was received on Thursday, August 27th, 2020, with a subject line of public hearing comment. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've been following this positional analysis for a while now. I also saw the city manager's options for the council. Option 1, which is to implement the Baker-Tilly recommendation, should be completely out of the question. I'm not even sure why this is on there. Baker-Tilly did not abide by any timelines and was highly inaccurate on a lot of data they produced. If there were parameters and goals given to Baker-Tilly up front, how did this company come up with this recommendation? One of the goals was to put people at market and reduce compaction. Well, this analysis will cause more compaction and only put people within a range of market and not truly at market. Also, to eliminate the 10-step pay scale for public safety would be disastrous. An open range system is not commonly used in public safety, and many cities have abandoned this type of system because of retention issues. This analysis would be a slap in the face to city employees and is not a fix to all the current problems. Option 2, which is to modify the Baker-Tilly recommendation, would not fix long-term issues, but only give a little more upfront to these employees the first year. If an employee was in a position for 4 years, they would get a 4% raise instead of the 2% raise. The employee would have been given almost a 4% raise if the old step system were in place. I don't understand how this would fix our current system either. Option 3, which is to work with the department directors through a department by department approach, seems like the wise choice. I am not sure why the directors did not have a say in this analysis all along. We are over a year into this and the department heads are just now able to add their input. Seems like Baker-Tilly and the city manager should have developed a team approach to this in the beginning, and we would not be in this position and trying to hurry the process at the very end. Each department has their own pay issues, and it seems reasonable to rely on their expertise. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach like Baker-Tilly recommended. This is an issue where some jobs, such as police officer, are severely under market and need to be addressed. Having each director look at their specific work group seems like the only logical method at this point if you want to make this right. I know all of you want this to be right in the end. Option 4, to forego the implementation until the next fiscal year, would be an embarrassment and should not even be considered. I am not even sure why this is a recommendation to the council. The turnover rate in some areas of the city is reaching a point where something has to be done. The analysis has gone on for way too long and the results were very disappointing. Can you imagine telling all city employees to wait another 10 months to find out what the next surprise will be? The confidence in the positional analysis is gone, and it is evident there are major issues that need to be dealt with immediately. I have faith each director is intimately involved in their work areas and would rely on their knowledge and expertise on this. Thank you for your time in this matter. Submitted by Bob Boucher.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the City Council on this matter before we close the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. I do have a question, maybe Sean, for you. In one of the public comments, we'd heard that a solution to resolve this going into the positional analysis pay structure would be provide the employees that haven't seen an increase receive a CPI adjustment for 5 years in addition to the 0.5% per year currently included in the plan. That would at least assist in showing recognition to employees who do not receive market adjustments as our policy states. Does our policy state something about market adjustments, or do you have any correlation to what that might be talking about?
If an employee's, it's not that they're not going to get a market adjustment. Employees that are at step 10, if going into the new structure and the implementation strategy that we move forward with, if that puts them up at the end of that pay range that we established, then they're not going to see as great of an increase as other employees will see. They'll still move into the new range, and it'll give them a little bit of an increase that they haven't seen since they've been at step 10, but it does put them back at step 10 or at the top of the range.
Okay.
Which is something that we can look at when we develop our policies, that we can put something into place for that type of a situation. So that's something that's still being addressed and looked at as part of our policy implementation.
Okay. Perfect. All right, a couple of thoughts I have initially is with this positional analysis, it's remained a top priority of the council to implement and fix this pay structure. But we also have gotten into the weeds a little bit. So, we're the people that say, okay, it's going to cost $2.5 million. We allocate that in the budget and we approve it. And then we rely on the city manager and department directors through his leadership to do that. So we're getting a bit into the weeds, but it's so important to what it is. And I know the city employees have been waiting a really long time. I know we've been talking about this for the 6 years I've been involved on council and not been able to address it. So I appreciate all the patience of all of the staff and all the work that department directors have done. I too agree with option 3, an approach to work with department directors. I know there's a little bit of discussion that each department director should have free reign on everything. Sounds great, but not really. We do have to have some parameters of stuff. I mean, just from a legal standpoint, from an HR standpoint, from transferability within the organization, we can't be running around with 12 different little cities that are operating in tandem within our cities. So we have to have some sort of framework of what that looks like. I think that we lost trust in this process, and so I would recommend that option 3 move forward, but I also do recommend a step system be put back in place so that people can map out where they're going and how they're going. I know that this currently has an open range, but that's my position on it. I would prefer that we have some sort of a step type system, whatever that looks like. I know currently our step system doesn't allow flexibility in certain areas. Maybe through policy it can, but that's what the experts can do, which I think it sounds like we have already within our staff. But that way people can map that through. I don't think that we implement this in October without having some sort of a roadmap for our employees to be able to look to what's next. We can't always be having this discussion at the council level. We have to have a very global perspective of what this is and what this looks like for everybody. Otherwise, we'll be wrapped up with this. I mean, every year. I mean, we've been dealing with this for 2 years, really intensely. Can you imagine if we had to do this every single year? We need to have some sort of a global perspective of what that looks like. I feel that the step system can do that. Again, I know it hinders some of the things that people were interested in the open range, but nonetheless, because the system is such it is, and I think where we lost confidence on it, we need to build in some confidence where people just know where it's going. There are no surprises going forward. So that's where the other thing I also do believe is, it wasn't mentioned, but through the analysis here, the police department, they would get, I'm sorry, I have 2 different versions. They would get specialty pay for the SWAT, the dive, the crash teams is included in this proposal. In order for fire to make it work, it looks like implementing their specialty pay was taken out. I would like to keep fire implementing it, but put that specialty pay back in. I think that's important to fire. It appears from what we have in front of us today that that'd be 78,000 additional dollars. And I would propose that that's what we do. So that's where I stand on it. It was option 3, department directors work with city manager and HR to make this all work. Let's move at rapid pace and implement the specialty pay for fire. And I think there's going to be some additional costs we learned from the court. It looks like $7,000 more than what we have here. So I'm sure there will be some other changes, but any other thoughts from the rest of the council on direction, or I'm sorry. I did close the public hearing, yes. Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Grow?
I like, the suggestion that you've made. I'm appreciative of that observation. And reinstating the step system, obviously, the low end and high end of that would be in accordance with what these adjustments were, so that we don't step them backwards, right?
Right.
So that's a good suggestion. I'm kind of with you there, Mr. Mayor. Just want to let you know.
Yeah, thank you.
I like the
Councilmember
idea
Grow.
of the specialty pay because that's very important.
Yeah, when it comes to, when I say institute a step system, I think that's new. So whatever that means that you all do through policy, through the city manager's office, HR and department directors, I don't know if that means that, I'm not telling you what that looks like. I just think a step system so that there's a pathway. You guys use that. So I think now our policy is 3.6% and 3.8% and 4.6. So you guys do that to make that stuff work based on the allocation we have in the budget. But I do think some sort of a consistent path forward. Councilmember Koch, are you in agreement with that direction, or?
I am in agreement. And again, I've been here a long time. I've heard from you guys for a long time. This has been a major issue. Obviously, nobody's happy with the study that we have. Please know, I said this the other night to the general public, and I'll say it to you all now as department heads. If there's issues and things that need to come forward and things that you didn't feel were good along the way, I would hope that you'd bring those to Jess and or to HR or however, so that if you're concerned that this study, if you're not getting time with a consultant, and then this is this consultant or any consultant, make sure that those issues are brought up and that everyone is aware and your concerns, because it is very important. Your opinion is very important to us, and this study was very important, and very disappointing that we couldn't come and make a decision that we're all super happy about right now. But we'll do the best that we can do with what we're given. As Jess made allusion to, we all have checkbooks at home. We all have checking accounts. You pay your bills. You hope you don't have to use savings, because savings will run out. If you have bills at the end of the month that are greater than your income, you have a problem. And so we need to live within our means. And that hurts us to have to say that, but it's the truth. So we're going to do the best that we can do. We made a commitment to you. We're going to follow through with that commitment. Just make sure that you understand that we hear you, and we wish we could do exactly what you wanted and need. But at this point, we're going to do the best we can do. And I appreciate you guys all for your support and for understanding and for being patient with us.
And Vice Mayor Lane, are you good with that direction?
Oh, absolutely. It falls in line with exactly what Mr. Dolan and I were talking about earlier. And to Ms. Koch, absolutely. Thank you all. The patience that you have shown is extraordinary. And we owe it to you to make sure that we get this right. We will get it right. We do have to work within budgetary constraints. We know what that means for this year, so we're going to implement stuff and a lot of these items that the department heads have come up with. That's not the end of it. It's not like we're going to implement this year and then we're done. Okay, we fixed it. We're on our way. No more. This will be an ongoing issue every single year, and your department heads will be working every single year. And this is something that the employees need to work with their departments and their department heads every single year. And yeah, we do have a budget, and I'm concerned. We've got our budget for this year. We're doing okay right now. My concern is 2 to 3 years down the road from what's happening right now, and how we're going to make ends meet 2 to 3 years from now. We're going to have some very, very serious discussions. To Mr. Fuller's comment about, we just bought a courthouse and we've spent money on this. We did do that. We can't focus only on one item when we're up here. Um, there's all kinds of issues with throughout the city that have to be addressed all the time. You guys are the most important. Our employees are the most important. And we're trying to show that to you now that we will fix this. It may take us a year or 2 years to get it fully implemented. And if we as a council need to go to the public and say, look, we need additional revenue because we're not doing what we need to do, then that's what we need to do. And we need to have those tough decisions and those tough discussions with the public. And I, for one, am willing to have that. If we need to come up with additional revenues so that we can pay our employees, all employees, not one group or another group, but all employees, fair market rates so that they can live here in this city. As Mrs. Campbell said, this is very, very important that they are able to have a living wage, whether they work at the Parks Department or the Police Department. It's very, very important that everybody in the city can afford to live here if they work for us. And we agree with that. And we will continue to fix this. And we will continue to tweak this, and we will continue to work with this. And I ask all of you, employees, to please continue to work with your department heads. Department heads, please continue to work with Mr. Knudsen. Take the stuff to him. And if you're not happy with all of that, then you come to us. But what we have seen over some of the people that get frustrated jump over all the different steps. And that happens with individual employees. And then that gets frustrating for them because then they feel like we're not listening to them. When we are, we're just trying to backtrack it around. So we will fix this. I think this is a great step. Step 3 is, or option 3, I think is absolutely the right way to go. Making sure that that specialty pay is included for all departments that have specialty pay is imperative. The employees need to know that we value what you do because you are what actually makes this city run. We don't. We just sit up here and look good, and then don't do anything. So now we're trying to do something, and we're trying to make it right. And this is, I said this earlier, I know, I'm joining on. The mayor likes it when I shut up. But I will go on. We will make this better, and we thank you for everything that you guys do, and we realize that you're the ones that actually run this city and make us look good because of what you do. And I get compliments constantly, whether you're in operations or the parks or the fire or the police, we get compliments on what you guys do, and we truly do value you and your input. So continue to work together and work with us, and we'll get through this. It may not fix it all within the next 10 days, but we will get this fixed. I guarantee it. So, thank you.
Thank you. And just a point of clarification with the implementing a step system of some sort, we don't do this every year. That would be why we would implement the step system, right?
No, I understand.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
No, I
you
understand.
mentioned we're going to do this every year. I'm like, no, we're not going to do this every year.
When it comes to the step system in the open range, I don't know what the best is for you. That's something that I think you all need to work together. The department heads working with HR and working with the city manager to figure out what's the best way to go. Open range, step system.
Well, I think what we're talking about right now is the direction to give a step system. That was what I proposed and what.
So
so I just want to make sure that that's.
Hey, I'm good.
If that's not the case, I mean, you obviously can have your own opinion, but that's what.
No, I understand that. I don't know what's the best. So if that's the direction that you all want, I'm good with that because.
And then the other part.
I see a lot of nodding heads out there. So, yes, I agree. The step system.
Perfect. And then the courthouse, I just want to clarify real quick because it is brought up, and sometimes people you only see one piece of it. And the current CIP budget that we're in right now, there's $7.5 million that's allocated for this. The purchase that we did through the opportunity that came before us is going to save taxpayers over $3.5 million over what's budgeted. So I mean, it seems like it might be that we're spending money not planned, but not the case at all. So it's a $3.5 million savings for our budget currently that's in there. So, Councilmember Lynn, are you on board with that strategy, or have other thoughts?
Yes, I'm on board with that. I just have a question. I know that we're not going to be able to implement everything by October 1st, but are we even going to start with what we initially started with?
Yeah, option 3 is by October, we would have what's in front of us with a couple of additional things adding back in fire specialty pay that's not
Okay.
outlined here. The court says Judge Kalali mentioned, and I'm sure there's going to be a couple of others when they get through it. But
Okay.
and Councilmember Dolan, you're on board.
I'm on board. I don't know if the crowd is. I don't see any smiles. No, I had to make the mash joke. No, I think it's a win. I think it's a win. It's a win for now. And like I said, we do have more we need to do. I think we all acknowledge that. Like the vice mayor said, we do have some serious decisions and discussions to have in the future. And I think we do that, to add on what the mayor says, we do that by getting into the weeds. Our job is not to spend time in the weeds. It's to be 30,000 feet helping the city run at this level. But sometimes we have to get into the weeds to know what's going on, to be able to give the staff direction who are in the weeds, to give you guys who are in the weeds. So I love these kind of meetings. We had an airport advisory board meeting, same thing, just to be able to have discussion. Like I tell people, part of what I do is explain to people how my role on city council really is. And I'm like, well, you guys all figured this out before you come in. I'm like, no, that's how business work. What city does is they tell us we can't really talk to each other, and they give us this hard problem, and they put us in an awkward room where we're sitting up on pedestals with glass separating us, and then saying, yeah, have just a casual conversation and figure this out. So we do need to get in the weeds, and I thank you guys. I thank you, the department heads, for saying things that you said. I appreciate the associations for letting us know. We can't fix a problem unless we know what it is. Like I said, not everyone's going to be happy. I just hope that a majority of the people out there are happier than they were and realize we are listening. And, and like I said, hopefully when we do win the lottery, we can get to that ultimate level. But we're doing our best with the resources we have to get to that level. And it's meetings like this, and we're going to have more meetings like this. And I encourage everyone to get involved. And like I said, reach out to us. I mean, like if you have problems, go to your department head, go to the city managers. But if you feel that there's something that's not working, you're still a taxpayer. I'm still your city council member. You see me somewhere, you can ask me questions. You can, I'm still available, and we need to know what's going on. So like I said, I just appreciate everyone's input and positivity and perspective on this. And I think we're doing good. So thank you guys.
And Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you for the opportunity to just add a real quick comment. I absolutely agree with the way that we want to go forward with this. I think it's excellent and it's going to benefit everyone. And I just want to say to all the staff and all of the employees, this is very near and dear to my heart. After 8 years of serving, and it's been such an honor to be a part of this. My goal is to, try to get this situation that has been ongoing for years as doable and as convenient and good for everybody, for the citizens, the city, and for all of the employees. And I just want to thank you all for being patient with us and understanding that we're trying to do within the constraints that we have. But I totally agree. I think this is going to be good. And I'll always be here to listen. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember McCoy. And I think just on the council, I know we talked about having to do the hard decisions about revenue and revenue options. I think we already committed to that. So by just giving this direction today, there's no other alternative than to find additional revenue sources in the upcoming year and as we move forward. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I add to that?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, this is also a double-edged sword for the department heads with transparency and trust in the community. There are a lot of people out there, even our newspaper that said, editorial, we should cut all departments by 8%. We should, trim the fat. There's people that think government and think, well, you're just spending too much money. And what I've seen in the last 2 years, I don't believe we are. But I'm also not the department head, like I said, that also says, well, it's your job to decide which guy in this. It's your job to, to even now find more. And I think we do. We get more. Now that we take care of our people better, we do get more. When you give somebody the right tool, they can be more efficient. So, like I said, what I've seen in the last 2 years, and when I go over the budget, I don't see anything that, we can cut this, we can cut that. It is going to be hard, and we're going to have to show and I think we have shown the community, but we're going to have to be even more efficient. I know in the recession time, you know, just talking with fire department as an example, you know, there's a lot of things that they stepped up and, yeah, we did this and we did that and we didn't have the budget, we didn't do this, but we did it because it needed to be done. And I think, like I said, I think you get more out of that people when they feel part of the team. And I hope that what we've come this far gives us more of that team feeling, and we do get that. But like I said, when we do get to those into the weeds and the discussions, we're gonna have to defend our spending. And like I said, in everything I've seen in 2 years, like I said, I'm no accountant and I'm no expert, but I feel confident, at least at the level I've seen, and I do trust the people in the positions. And I've also seen over the last few years, you know, even with Public Works, with Greg getting in there, he has got in, and why are we doing this? And he has a sign in his office. I think it's, what do you do here? You know, and sometimes we need to go through that, and we need to do that, and we do. We spend a lot of money, and and it's a timing issue sometimes too. If we don't replace the machine at the right time, you spend way more than you would have done had you bought a brand new one. So, like I said, it's that double-edged sword. So like I said, I thank the department heads, I thank the city manager, and I thank the council. You know, like I said, it's a long road ahead, but I definitely feel like we're on the right track, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Knutson, do you have any final thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council, for the direction, and moving forward, it means a lot. We talked about in terms of additional revenues and so forth, and we're on a path, and we feel great about it, and the employees are going to feel great about this. But just the understanding, we can't absorb these costs within the existing budget. So those are just conversations that we're going to hit pause on right now, and then continue come March, April timeframe when we start to develop budgets. So I just want to make sure that that's accordingly, and to your point that you just spoke, Mr. Mayor. And then lastly, if I can, we talked about the step increases. We can move forward in that direction. Sounds like that's the consensus coming from council. But I just want to make sure that we get a little bit of a caveat there. So we, through this process, one of the things we did with the ranges is we made them broader. They're longer. So if the direction is for the step plan, are we looking at, is it 10? If it's 10 steps, that's bigger increases throughout the year. Do we want to go back, or do we want more the direction from council? Is that to get close in terms of what the existing step is, which is a 3.8% for non-exempt employees? We in the city for years, our mid-level employees and our low-level employees throughout the grade system receives a 3.8% increase with their step plan. The employees at the top of the organization receive, those that get paid a salary and not a wage, receive a 4.6% increase through the step plan. So something when I looked at was something that we want to make sure that we're addressing. So we talked about step. Those the voices coming from council are very loud, so we want to make sure that we're doing exactly what the direction is. Just in terms of, are we trying to get close to that 3.8%? Are we trying to get close to the 10-step process, or
Yeah, so
it
that's
doesn't have to be specific?
Yeah, so that's what the direction that I was proposing from council, and that's why I mentioned I'm in there clearly that the step system that we have now doesn't mean that that's what this step system would be. You guys know what to do, so put together a step system that works within the range and in the dollars, and if that's a 8-step plan, an 11-step plan, a 2.5%, whatever, you guys do that, and then let us know what type of resources. But it needs to, our goal from a council, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on any of my colleagues on council, is to not impact compaction and make sure we're paying market wages. So that's the direction we stay committed to, and however you all need to make that work. I just think a path forward that is certain is why I proposed a step plan.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question. Do we still plan on that being citywide standard or by department? Because like I said, it sounds like police and fire are different, you know.
Citywide.
So citywide.
Yes, there has to be continuity within the organization.
yeah,
I mean, you have to have, right now in an implementation of a plan, there's the ability to look at each one individually because they have unique circumstances or unique issues. That's what option 3 gives.
Yeah.
But as you go forward, every city employee should have the same ability to know their path forward, and build a little bit more trust in the system that we lost trust through this process, is what my position was. So,
okay.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Mr. Knutson?
No, appreciate the conversations.
All right, so real quick, I would like to thank Jerry Bracamani and Steve Blake in the back. They're in the control room making all of this technology happen for those watching at home and into the future. I'd also like to thank all the department directors for being here. I know this is now 2 late nights. Also to all of the staff for putting up with us this week. I think you've put up with us for like 12 or 14 hours in official meetings. So thank you so much. And to Sean, you have a lot on your shoulders, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing, and look forward to a good final output. So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Lane and a second from the rest of my colleagues on council. We are adjourned. Be kind.